Chapter 286, John Wick, Prequel 3. John Wick didn't hesitate. Understood, sir. I'll head to New York right away. No rush. We'll meet at the hotel in an hour. I have something for you. All right, sir. See you in an hour. After he hung up, William stepped back a few paces, focused, and then ran. He sprinted to the edge of the warehouse, vaulted the fence, and slipped in through a ventilation shaft. With his mental powers active, he was aware of everything within a 200-meter radius. Coupled with Sunday's alerts, he threaded past sentries and thugs as if taking a stroll. He reached the room where the cash was stored, climbed down through the shaft, and froze. Pallets of bundled bills filled the space. He fought to keep his excitement in check as he counted at least 200 bundles, each the size of a large suitcase. Sunday ran the numbers in his head and confirmed William's estimate. If these were all $100 bills, each bundle would be roughly $10 million. That put the stash well over $2 billion. William, unsurprised given Pushkin's oligarch status, grinned to himself. A clever rabbit keeps multiple burrows. He'd expected at least $1 billion, but the real total was far higher. He set a teleportation coordinate inside the ventilation shaft, climbed back out the same way, and mounted his motorcycle. Riding without headlights and with the engine barely more than a whisper, he threaded out of the warehouse perimeter, then accelerated once he was clear and headed for the hotel. He wasn't going to open a portal and move cash just yet. The fake bills for his plan hadn't arrived, and a cautious man like William preferred to wait. In a few days, the small bills in the warehouse would be swapped for larger denominations anyway. No hurry. Back at the hotel, he took the private elevator up to his suite, declined the butler's meal service, closed the door, and scanned the room with his mind. Finding nothing, he opened a portal to the basement of Oxford Castle, retrieved a case of specialized equipment, and returned it to his Boston suite. He set the case by the bar, poured a glass of whiskey, and pondered the next steps while he waited for John Wick. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. William set down his glass and opened the door himself. John Wick stood there in a tailored suit. "Good evening, Mr. Davenhill," John said. "Good evening, John. Come in." William led him to the liquor cabinet and poured a measure of Macallan 1956. John took the glass and immediately swallowed half of it. "No," William chided gently, smiling. "This is whiskey, not vodka. Good whiskey is meant to be savored." John laughed. "Sorry, sir. I'm a polar bear. No matter the drink, we tend to gulp, but this is excellent." He finished the glass and glanced hopefully at the bottle. William poured him another full glass and pushed the bottle closer. He didn't mind John's habit, but he wasn't going to pour a third glass himself. "I called you here to give you some equipment," William said, indicating the case on the bar. "These devices will help on future missions. I want you to get married, not get killed." John set his glass down, opened the case, and found a pair of transparent glasses, a smartphone, and a tiny earpiece. William gestured for him to power the phone on and put in the earpiece. Within seconds, a deep, mature male voice filled John's ear. For a moment, John thought someone in the next room was speaking, but then the voice introduced itself as Sunday. The voice was calm, precise, and oddly alive. John looked at William, astonishment on his face. He had fought for years and respected skill. Intellect impressed him most of all. And Sunday sounded like an experienced, highly competent operator, not a piece of software. Following Sunday's instructions, John slipped on the glasses. A few presses brought up a heads-up display over the lenses. When he looked at the bottle of Macallan, a three-dimensional readout hovered in his vision, and Sunday's voice said, "Macallan 1956. Market price approximately $14,000 and rising. Based on Mr. Rod, William Davenhill's consumption and current supply trends, scarcity is likely within a year. Price could double or triple. Expect a knock-on increase for other Macallan vintages. Estimate 10 to 30%. Strongly recommend purchase and hold." John was dumbfounded. Was this an AI? He couldn't tell. It sounded like a real adult with decades of knowledge. He, a man who lived by a gun, felt disarmed by it. For the next half hour, John tested the system and chatted with Sunday, utterly absorbed. "All right, take your equipment and go," William said finally, glancing at his watch. John checked his own. It was already 11 o'clock. "Apologies, Mr. Davenhill. I'm leaving now for New York to see Viggo and Abram Tarasov. They should be in Boston to meet you around noon tomorrow. Goodbye, Mr. Davenhill." William walked him to the door. "Be discreet. Don't alarm their men before you get results. If they refuse, send them to meet God." "Understood, sir," John said. "No one refuses the Davenhill family's offer. Wait for my news. If things go well, you won't have to worry about Yuri Orlov anymore. He may come begging," William added, a hint of amusement in his voice. "I've booked you a direct flight. See the butler when you leave. He'll get you to the plane." "Thank you, sir." John left the suite, still a little puzzled but carrying the case. Outside, the butler whispered, "Please follow me, sir. The car and aircraft are ready. Shall we depart?" "Yes, let's go." A short drive and a brief hop on a private jet later, John arrived at a private airfield in New York. A large, immaculately dressed man waited nearby. John recognized him and smiled. "Good evening, Charon. I didn't expect you to pick me up." "Good evening, Mr. Wick." Charon nodded toward a parked Mustang. "Mr. William Davenhill prepared this for you. I hope you like it." John walked around the car, eyes lighting up. "A 1SS Mustang? There aren't many of those left." Charon smiled. "For Mr. Davenhill, there is no car he cannot buy. The only question is whether he wants to." John grinned. "I like it. Thank you." Charon opened the trunk and pointed to two neatly wrapped boxes. "Two suits and shirts, tailored to your measurements. You should change now." John nodded, already imagining the meeting ahead and the new tools at his disposal. He slid into the passenger seat of the Mustang, feeling the weight of what William had set in motion and the strange, uncanny companionship of Sunday in his ear. "What is this?" John Wick asked, puzzled. "Is there anything special about them?" Charon replied, "Of course, these suits are bulletproof. We tested them before tailoring them for you. With this suit, a hit to the chest from a high-powered rifle will at worst break your ribs. A handgun will leave you bruised for a few days." John's eyes lit up. Charon smiled and continued. "Two custom 1911s, 12 rounds each, fitted with short suppressors for easier drawing. The backpack has ropes and anchors, enough to rappel from the 6th floor with an adult on your back. Anything else you need that's reasonably available, the hotel will provide." John didn't care who was listening. He stripped off his suit and shirt, slipped into one of the bulletproof suits, cinched the tactical belt, and loaded 8 magazines into it. He holstered both pistols at his sides, walked a few paces, and ran through a few quick-draw motions. Finding no obstruction, he shook his head at Charon. "These 2 pistols will do. Get me a stun baton that can incapacitate someone without killing them. Mr. Devonshire is talking about a cooperation deal with Viggo and Abram Tarasov. Until that's settled, I'll avoid using guns and knives whenever I can." Charon gave a small, knowing laugh. "Mr. Wick, a stun baton that drops someone instantly isn't necessarily safer than a knife. If it stays in contact just a 1/10 of a second too long, there's a real risk the person will die." John shrugged. "At least I won't be using a gun or a knife. If some small-time thug gets electrocuted to death, he was unlucky." "All right, your baton will be delivered outside Viggo Tarasov's club in 15 minutes. Do you want help locating Viggo?" "No, thank you. I already knew where he was." After a final weapons check, John handed Charon the gift box with the spare bulletproof suit. "Please store this at the Continental. If I need it, I'll come by." "Understood, Mr. Wick." Charon took the box. "Good luck." John nodded, slid into the Mustang, turned the key, and the engine roared. He stamped the accelerator and the classic coupe spat gravel as it tore out of the airport, heading for Viggo Tarasov's nightclub. Chapter 287, John Wick Says I'm Very Cheap. Following Sunday's directions, John drove the '69 Mustang flat out from the airport toward downtown Manhattan, waking half the city on the way. He only began to calm when he hit North Brooklyn, and men with long guns started shouting at him. By the time he approached Viggo Tarasov's club, his speed was down to 30 miles an hour. He turned into an alley a few dozen meters from the club, cut the engine, exited, and locked the car. He looked around, worried the mostly new Mustang might be stolen by North Brooklyn's toughs. "If anyone dares steal my car, I'll kill them," he muttered. Sunday's voice entered his ear. "Mr. Wick, the 3D map of the Tarasov nightclub is now on your HUD. Put the glasses on, observe, and follow my guidance." "Understood." He put on the glasses. The 3D layout snapped into place. Sunday guided him through the approach, zooming in on choke points and blind spots. He slung the backpack on, retrieved the stun baton Charon had stashed in a dumpster nearby, pulled a black mask over his face, and climbed via a drain pipe to the sixth-floor roof under cover of night. He crouched and waited. All cameras will enter a blind spot in 5 seconds. You have 4 seconds to run to the stairwell. 5, 4, 3, 2, run! At Sunday's cue, John sprinted for the stairhead like a cheetah. In the last few meters, the voice cut in again. Get down! He rolled, slammed himself against the stairwell's side, and lay still until Sunday said it was safe. A few minutes later, 4 seconds of safe time. He crawled to the stairwell door, slipped inside when the coast cleared, and closed it silently behind him. He leaned against the door and drew breath. His stamina wasn't what it used to be. He'd been taking care of someone lately. It was a trade-off for a different kind of life. Following Sunday's prompts and the instincts honed over a decade of killing, John worked his way from the 6th to the 3rd floor, knocking out or stunning 5 guards along the way. After 2 clean takedowns, the 3rd man convulsed, foaming at the mouth, and went still. John swore under his breath and looked down at the baton. He hadn't realized how powerful the thing was. A fraction of a second too long, and the man was dead. He dragged the corpse into an empty room. Once someone had died, the choice was made for him. He'd use the baton when ambushing, but no more experimenting. As he cleared the last corridor, 3 thugs with Uzis stood outside Viggo's office. There was no quiet approach. He drew his pistol, and 3 shots, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Later, the 3 were down. He forced his way to the office door on the 3rd floor, stopped, and listened while Sunday, having penetrated the club's mainframe, fed him the situation inside. Viggo was alone in the office. John straightened, dusted his suit, fixed his hair, and knocked on the door. "Come in," a voice allowed. He opened the door. Behind the desk sat a middle-aged man, alert and wary. "Are you lost, friend?" Viggo asked. "No," John said smoothly, "but if I were you, I'd take your hand off that gun. I guarantee you won't draw faster than me." John's face was calm, his right hand casually extended, the muscles under his suit barely trembling. Viggo felt a strange compulsion to comply. This masked man could very likely end him before he could draw. "All right, pal." Viggo slowly withdrew his hand from a drawer and laid both palms flat on the desk. "Do we have a feud?" "No," John said. "Not yet, but that might change after today." Viggo exhaled, relief, then tightened at the last sentence. "What do you mean?" "It means I just took out at least 8 of your men, and another 11 are in unknown condition. If that bothers you, then I apologize. You and I now have a feud." Viggo fell silent, studying John, well-dressed, black tie, white shirt, short stubble, hair slicked back, eyes that didn't miss anything. "So you're not here for revenge," he said slowly. "If you were, you wouldn't be wasting your breath on words." He stood and took a step closer, watching him with a cold, appraising smile. "Buddy, since you managed to get in here quiet as a mouse, I'll overlook the trespass, on one condition. Work for me. What do you say?" John Wick's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile that wasn't friendly. "And what can you do to me if I refuse? Kill my family? Everyone connected to me?" He shrugged, amused. "Try it. Touch one of my people and I'll kill 10 of yours in return. You're a Tarasov. You've heard the stories about the Baba Yaga, haven't you?" Viggo Tarasov stiffened. The Baba Yaga was the kind of legend you heard back home to frighten children, but the name still carried weight. John continued, quiet and cold. "You could bring your strongest men here and try to stomp the Baba Yaga flat. He'd smile while it happened and offer the other cheek for the next stomp. Do you know why?" Viggo's jaw worked. "Because that's what people like you think gangsters are, expendable. That's your mistake." Viggo opened his mouth, then shut it. John Wick, without breaking his gaze, drew 2 specially modified 1911s from beneath his jacket. He leveled the pistol in his left hand at Viggo's forehead and the other behind him toward the office door. He squeezed the trigger once without turning his head. The suppressed report was flat and final. "Bang," John said, voice casual. "The first." Bang. Another soft report. "The second." Bang. A third. "The third. If I were you," he added, "I'd tell whoever's standing outside to drop their weapons. They won't see tomorrow if they don't." Bang. John's hand never trembled. "Someone's trying a grenade, Mr. Tarasov. Seems you're not the only one playing king in this club." He cocked his head. Want me to clean house for you? I'm cheap. Small fry, 100,000. A boss, 1,000,000. Take it or leave it. Vigo, that same ruthless man who'd carved a place for himself in the underworld, believed every word. The thought of a grenade frenzy in his club made his face harden. Fine, he said. I'll pay what you ask. Kill everyone outside. Just get it done. And give me a way to reach you afterward. As long as you walk out of here, we'll talk. John paused only a breath before replying. Selling out your own men and your rivals to clear suspicion? That's your plan? A cold laugh escaped Vigo. Someone wants me dead. Should I kill him first, or wait to be killed? Help me get rid of the men outside, and consider this a show of good faith. Subordinates are supposed to take bullets for their bosses, aren't they? The Arctic bear has plenty of grunts who will follow instructions. Spread the word. We'll have half these poor bastards coming to New York to take my place. John's mouth tightened. He lowered the gun from Vigo's head, but kept it in hand. Seems you've been planning to go it alone for a while. Congratulations, Mr. Tarasov. Your life is safe for now. The phone on Vigo's desk rang. John heard Sunday's voice in his ear, calm and efficient. Mr. Wick, the call is from Mr. William Devonshire. Answer it, John told Vigo. It's my boss. Vigo took the receiver and put on a neutral tone. Hello? A rough, electronically altered voice asked. Mr. Tarasov, if Pushkin and his direct subordinate Ted Lenson were eliminated, what would you be willing to pay? There was a long silence. Vigo's eyes flicked to John, to the pistols, and back again. Everything, he said finally in a low voice. There was a click, then the new voice said, We're recording. Please repeat that. Vigo hesitated. John shifted his jacket just enough to show the holster, the gun. The message was unmistakable. Say it or die, he swallowed. Before he rose to prominence, he'd been Pushkin's dog. Years of service had brought him status, but not respect. Pushkin still treated him like a subordinate, not an equal. Killing Pushkin would remove the last tether. The future profits were more than enough to justify the risk. Vigo spoke, the words raw with ambition. I, Vigo Tarasov, am willing to pay anything for Pushkin's death. A recorded voice returned. Very clear. Congratulations, Mr. Tarasov. You will soon become the head of the East Coast Arctic Bear. We look forward to our cooperation. We will also invite your son to be our guest for a few days. Don't worry, he will be treated well. Goodbye. Vigo slammed the receiver down and cursed, then turned on John, furious and helpless. Is that your idea of persuasion? A recording? Now you threaten my son? John Wick's voice was flat. Exactly because he's your only son, he gives me leverage. Don't pretend you care when your tone gets cold. That useless son of yours is a continuation of the line, nothing more, in your eyes. One more question. After I fight my way out of here, will the people who work for you ever know about this meeting? Vigo, strangely calm in the face of exposure, laughed hollowly. They're mostly muscle with bad habits, drugs, women, counting their paydays. They contact Pushkin when they hand over the cash at month's end. It's only the 21st today. You've got 9 days to find him. As for my men who saw me here, get rid of the low-level bosses who can place me, and no one will ever know. Do you want me to tell you where my son is? No need, John said. He stepped back out of the light and waited, earbud against his skin. Sunday's voice came through. You're clear. Proceed. John took a breath and opened the door. His right hand extended with the pistol, and 2 suppressed shots went through the thin hallway air at 2 men who were advancing with guns raised. Their heads snapped back, bodies folding. Before they hit the floor, he'd already moved, using their collapsing forms as a shield. Thugs in the corridor were frozen with shock as he produced both 1911s and emptied a controlled 3-round burst into the nearest cluster. In seconds, it was over. 5 men lay down by his hands, not a single return shot. Vigo, who had watched the execution of his men and the calculated speed of the assault, felt something cold and final settle in his chest. He whispered, Baba Yaga, he's the Baba Yaga. Half an hour later, John Wick walked through the carnage like a man checking a job. He emerged from the hotel carrying Vigo's son, Ilyasov Tarasov, unconscious but alive. He didn't unfasten the limp boy's clothes or speak. He simply set him down in the trunk of his 1969 Mustang and closed it with the same casual efficiency he'd used to draw his guns. He patted his suit, feeling the dents where bullets had struck and deformed on the armored cloth. The armor had done its job. Short-barreled handguns had kissed the fabric and gone no farther. John flicked the grit from his sleeve and, slipping behind the wheel, tapped his earpiece. "What are your orders, Mr. Wick?" Sunday asked. "Tell Mr. Devonshire it's done," John said. "If he's awake, tell him I'll report in, but first I need to move his son and lay low. I don't think we need to hunt Abram Tarasov right now." "Understood," Sunday replied. "I've already found a secure location for Ilyasov. Go to Pier Zex. There's a rented warehouse, secluded. I'll have it ready." John started the engine and pulled away from the curb, the Mustang's growl swallowed by the city. He glanced once in the rearview mirror toward the hotel, then forward, toward the pier, the warehouse, and the long work that still lay ahead. Inside the compound were a few employee dormitories converted from shipping containers. The conditions weren't bad. As long as the container was locked from the outside, with Ilshov's abilities, he wouldn't be able to get out. "Okay, understood." John Wick stopped at a 24-hour convenience store and bought enough food and water to last Ilshov 2 weeks. Then he drove to the warehouse Sunday had described, parked, opened the trunk, and carried the unconscious man into the container dormitory. He tossed Ilshov onto the narrow bunk. The impact brought the man groaning back to consciousness. John looked the small room over. A bed, a tiny toilet, and a few fist-sized vents. Seeing Ilshov stir, he said nothing. He stepped out, locked the door with an iron chain, then reinforced it with several metal bars. Satisfied that escape was impossible, he got into his car, revved the engine a few times, and drove off. Ilshov, still foggy, woke in time to hear the raw, throaty roar of a Mustang's engine. For days after this, any sight or sound of a Mustang would drag him back to this moment and set his nerves on edge. Chapter 289. Even a tame wolf will miss the days of eating meat. The next morning, William had barely opened his eyes when Sunday reported that the printing equipment and the venue were ready. Because so much prop currency was needed, Sunday had insisted, out of caution, that William personally load the paper and ink into the presses. William agreed without hesitation. After breakfast, he rode his Ducati R6 to the rented space. The machines had already been calibrated. All that remained was for William to mix the ink according to a formula Sunday had found online, feed the paper, and start the run. The bills would be stamped prop, but visually the notes would be about 70% indistinguishable from the real thing. Even after being burned, they could fool an untrained inspector. Following Sunday's instructions, William spent 2 days in the printing warehouse. Every half hour, he used his mental power to push fresh stacks of paper into the feeder while the machine cranked out sheet after sheet of counterfeit currency. Around 11 that second night, as he was processing the last batch, his phone rang. He snapped his fingers, and Sunday's voice came through his earpiece. "Sir, the call is from Mr. Robert McCall." "Mr. McCall?" William frowned. "Why would he call me?" "Sir, Mr. McCall was discharged from the hospital this evening and phoned you shortly after," Sunday replied. "You didn't ask me to track Miss Alina, so I only learned from hospital records that she was admitted at 3 a.m. yesterday. The cause of her injuries isn't specified, but the records indicate severe trauma, head, body, and face, and the attending notes suggest she was beaten and kicked. Fortunately, she regained consciousness at 2 p.m. today and is out of immediate danger." At 9:05 p.m., Mr. McCall went to the hospital after speaking with the restaurant owner, Mr. Jacob, but he didn't meet Miss Alina in person. He did, however, learn from her companions about why she was beaten and the situation of the other girls controlled by the gang. After leaving, he called you. There are 5 seconds before the call disconnects. Would you like me to connect it? Connect it. William was genuinely curious. Logically, wouldn't McCall be rushing to Pushkin's gang on the East Coast with whatever money he had, attempting to buy Alina's freedom? After being spurned by Slavik, wouldn't he exact revenge on Slavik and his men? The line clicked and the call went through. "Hello, this is William Cavendish. Who is calling?" "Mr. Cavendish," said a cautious older voice. "This is Robert McCall. I'm sorry to bother you so late." "I'm listening," William said, keeping his tone casual as if he'd just woken up. "I'm calling about the position you mentioned the other day. I've been thinking, I'd rather do something meaningful than waste away. I'm old, but I have a lifetime of security experience. I can take charge of the town's security and make sure no one interferes with your castle or your mother's life. Is that so? William dragged the words out. The position is open, but I'm not convinced you can actually manage an entire town's security. To be responsible to the residents, I'll need proof that you have the necessary skills. McCall understood what William was really asking. It wasn't a routine evaluation. It was a test to see if he still had the will and the ability to kill. After a pause, he said, I understand. I do have one request. I have some loose ends here I need to take care of before I can move to Oxford. Could the bodyguard with medium-length hair, the one who stood outside the restaurant that night, assist me? He could assess my capability, and with his help I can wrap things up faster and be with you sooner. William chuckled. McCall, I don't believe you can't tell that man is a killer, not just a bodyguard. And I know what you're thinking. But do you expect me to pick a fight with the Russian polar bear gang in America just for your sake? Those guys are vengeful. They'll hunt anyone who crosses them indefinitely. Tell me, McCall, how do you plan to compensate for the risks I might take if I interfere? My life, McCall answered without hesitation. And the rest of my days. William sighed. Is it worth it? For an unrelated girl, a woman who's been controlled by a gang since childhood? You might save her now, but if the polar bears find her again, she could betray you in a heartbeat to save herself. There was a long silence. McCall let out a slow breath. I don't know why, Mr. Cavendish. Since my wife died, I've been adrift, but seeing Alina, bruised and broken, gave me a purpose again. I want to use what I know to punish the injustices I see. Dealing with scum is what I do best. My experience allows me to help those who can't help themselves. William cursed under his breath. That bleeding heart. How much righteousness does an old man need to still chase after it? But McCall's brand of justice wasn't sentimental. He was willing to use physical force. That fit with William's own belief in ending threats decisively. He found himself amused and approving. All right, William said, relaxing. I like you, McCall. I like people who have a line they won't cross and who aren't soft when they act. Congratulations, you're hired on a 1-year probation. Impress me and there'll be a bigger role for you. Someone will come to see you tomorrow evening and give you instructions. One last thing, the girl you saw today is not safe anymore. If you don't want to live with regrets, you'd better hide her and Alina. Do you need my help with that? Yes, Mr. Cavendish. Thank you for the warning. I was going to ask for help because I'm worried about their safety. If you take it on, I'm grateful. Goodbye. Goodbye. William ended the call and sat back. For all McCall's righteous talk, the old man was like Yuri Orlov, unable to give up what he did best. Retirement had bored him. He wanted action again. Still, William liked that McCall paired conviction with the willingness to use force. That combination, principled but ruthless, was useful. Chapter 290. Don't provoke an honest man. A sense of accomplishment matters to a person. It shapes how they approach life. Yuri McCall had discovered long ago that he wasn't good at much else besides buying and selling weapons. He'd stepped away for his wife and children, but retirement never fit him. After his wife's accidental death, he had faked his own, a man named McCall, gone. But without love or family, an overly ordinary life left him hollow. When he saw Alina's ruined state, something that had been simmering inside him finally found a reason to surface. Doing what he knew how to do, eliminating monsters who had slipped through the cracks of the law, could be framed as a kind of justice. He told himself, "They're scum the law can't touch. If the law won't punish them, I will." The next evening, when he met John Wick, he smiled and said, "Watch the downstairs. If I get exposed, you'll cover me. I can handle upstairs. No problem." John nodded and produced a pair of black-rimmed glasses with a built-in camera and a phone, handing them over. "Mr. Devonhill asked me to give these to you. The glasses will stream everything. He wants to see how you handle this." McCall chuckled. He understood what William meant, a test of competence before they invited him in. He put the glasses on, and they fit oddly well. "Careful work," he said. "They're the right size." "Turn the phone on before you use them," John advised. He smoothed his suit and slicked back hair, then eased into the nearby polar bear restaurant. John scanned the room, sat where the cameras couldn't reach, ordered chicken Kiev, caviar, borscht, blini, a slice of chocolate mousse cake, and a shot of vodka, and began to eat. 10 minutes later, McCall, in plain clothes and a baseball cap, head down, slipped through the restaurant and headed for the second floor while the staff remained oblivious. John slipped on the spare glasses to get McCall's feed, and William, comfortably lounging in a hotel suite with a glass of whiskey, had Sunday stream the video to the TV. They watched in silence as McCall climbed the stairs and walked straight into the boss's office. Slavi's office was small and mean. A boss behind the desk with a glass of vodka, 3 thugs drinking at a little bar, and another thug in flashy golden shoes lounging on a sofa near the door. McCall opened the door, stepped in, and quickly took in the room. "Lost, buddy?" Slavi asked, sour and suspicious. A long-haired thug jumped up as if to intercept. McCall pulled a card from his pocket, one of those suggestive business cards that meant one of the girls, and laid it on the desk. Slavi's smile widened. He assumed a customer had wandered in. "I'm looking for a girl named Alina," McCall said. Slavi waved a dismissive hand. "We have lots of girls. I don't know an Alina. Bring a photo next time, old man. Show me who could turn your head. Maybe I'll give her extra shifts." His cronies laughed. McCall's face hardened. Slavi's words were full of scorn, but they went further. He mocked McCall's clothes and then, with a cruel relish, revealed his plan. "We're thinking of selling her as a virgin at an auction. She's underage, you see. There's money in that kind of thing. Underage, being sold." The idea stripped the room of air for McCall. Every breath those men took felt like pollution. He wanted to tear them apart. If they had souls, he'd rip them out by hand. But he wasn't a rookie. Acting in a public restaurant's boss office was dangerous. He sized up the room. The nearest armed man was 5 or 6 meters away. If he moved now, he couldn't neutralize every threat. He let the rage tighten his jaw, then smoothed his expression into fear and deference. "Fine," he said softly. "I'll go." That relieved Slavi. The boss thought he had frightened the old man off. "Get out. You're wasting my time." McCall nodded and stepped toward the door. Once outside in the hall, he opened and closed the door twice in quick succession, drawing attention back into the room, especially from the armed thug on the sofa. He lingered a moment behind the door, eyes scanning every edge. Knives, bottles, chair placements, exit routes. He timed the sequence in his head, whispering under his breath, 16 seconds. Then he walked back in. The thug nearest the door rose and shadowed him, hand going to a holstered weapon. Before the man could raise and aim, McCall spun, grabbed his right wrist, and cracked him in the nose. The man howled. With a quick twist, McCall yanked upward on the pistol hand. There was a sick crack as the man's arm dislocated. McCall ignored the spasm of pain and seized the fallen Glock 17 with a suppressor from the thug's reach. He turned, leveled the pistol at Slavi's forehead, and fired. Slavi reacted instinctively, half standing and raising a palm to protect his head. The bullet hit the raised hand, then severed an artery in his neck. Slavi collapsed, gurgling, unable to move. Before McCall could swing the gun, the dislocated thug recovered enough to slap the Glock out of his hand. The gun skittered away, and a second man lunged. McCall snatched a small wineglass from a nearby table and rammed it into the eye of the dislocated man. The eyeball burst. The thug fell, blinded and screaming. 2 down, 3 to go. A gold-chained thug charged with a dagger. McCall sidestepped, used the attacker's momentum, grabbed the wrist, and with a hard slap at the elbow, he broke the joint. The dagger sank home as the man's arm tore across his own chest. McCall freed his grip and dumped the corpse aside. Another man in a vest closed in with a punch. McCall pulled the dagger from the dead thug's chest, slashed across the vest-wearing man's throat, where the trachea and carotid lay exposed, then kicked out a leg and drove the man's head into the corner of a table. The blow snapped the neck. The man crumpled like a broken stack of mud. All of it happened in a flurry. Practiced, efficient, merciless. By the time John and William were watching through the feed, the room was a chaotic wreck, and Slavi lay dying on the floor, the air filled with the metallic tang of blood and the silent stillness of death. Chapter 292, The Lingering Madame M. Before the man with the dagger, whose heart had already been pierced, could finish his wail, Robert McCall drove his blade into the man's neck. The knife sank deep. McCall, a former operative, never held back. He twisted and withdrew, the motion slicing a ragged half-moon into the throat. He backed away a few steps to avoid the spray of blood, watching the only remaining long-haired thug with a reverse grip on his blade. To keep from inhaling the mist, McCall stood very still and studied the man. "You're the last one. Why aren't you smiling now?" "Fuck you," the long-haired thug spat. These were desperate men. Despite knowing they were beaten, he grabbed a wine bottle and lunged. McCall ducked under the swing, then stabbed the man through the left kidney. He withdrew the dagger and slashed the hand that held the bottle. Tendons severed, the hand went limp, and the bottle fell. The pain slowed the man's reactions. McCall rose, stabbed the other wrist to disable both hands, then drove the blade into the man's chest. He grabbed the thug by the hair and leaned in. "Smile again." A crazed grin twisted the man's face. "Fuck you." McCall snorted with irritation, raised the dagger, and plunged it up through the man's chin into his palate. He held the terrified face in his hand. "Come on, smile again." William and John Wick, watching through the live feed in McCall's glasses, felt it in their bones. How much did McCall hate these scumbags? The killings were brutal and methodical. McCall let the long-haired man slump and, checking his left wrist, pressed the watch. 28 seconds. He frowned, then shook his head. Age had dulled his speed. Skill remained, but his body no longer moved like it used to. McCall scanned the room to confirm there were no more threats. All four were dead. He walked to the desk and sat in front of Slavi, who lay on the floor clutching his throat. Slavi's eyes were wide with terror. McCall's voice was calm and clinical. "Your heart rate is 3 times normal. It's because your blood pressure is falling. Your heart is racing to maintain circulation. The faster it beats, the faster you bleed. In about 30 seconds, your organs will fail, respiration will stop, and you'll suffocate. Imagine if you'd accepted a ransom for Arena. You'd have lived a few more days instead of lying here on a cold floor, dying slowly." Slavi was already struggling to breathe. He wanted one thing before he died, to know who had done this. "Who are you?" he gasped. "My name is Robert McCall," McCall answered. "When you meet your 4 partners in hell, tell them who killed you." He watched the watch. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Before he reached 30, Slavi's breathing stuttered and stopped. McCall sat on the floor for a moment and shook his head, then murmured to the dead man, "You shouldn't have come to this country. This is hell, and we are all devils." He stood, glanced one last time at Slavi, and added, "Yes, we are all devils." McCall collected every dagger and pistol he had handled into a bag, wiped the doorknob and any other surfaces he'd touched with a damp cloth, then climbed the stairs to the roof. He vaulted to the neighboring building's roof and made his way down the street, calm as ever, and eventually headed home. John Wick waited until McCall boarded a bus and was out of sight before he spoke. "Sir, where did you find that pervert? He gives me a bad feeling." William Devonshire laughed softly. "You've killed more people than McCall, John. What's there to feel bad about? The difference is McCall uses his hands, his feet, and his head. You tend to rely on a gun. It's uncomfortable to watch someone who can kill so effortlessly with nothing but a pen or a shoe." John was quiet for a moment, weighing his own experience against William's assessment. "All right, I admit my skills aren't the same, but don't think I don't use my brain when I work. I don't just shoot people." "That's not funny," William scoffed. "When was the last time you didn't just walk in with a gun and clear the room?" John fell silent as William laughed. After a few breaths, William said, "Rest for 2 days. I'll call you for the next job. Bye." "Bye, sir," John replied. William put the phone down and said to Sunday, his assistant, "Patch me through to Antonov, the polar bear squad leader who was on assignment in Sierra Leone last month." "Connecting now, sir," Sunday said. After a pause, the call went through. A tired Russian voice answered, "Hello, good morning, Mr. Devonshire. What can I do for you?" William glanced at Sunday, who reminded him, "It's 4 in the morning in Moscow." "Oh, right. Sorry, Antonov. Since you're awake, hear me out before you go back to sleep." "No need to apologize, Mr. Devonshire. Give your orders." William outlined the mission without wasting words. "This job is in polar bear country. The target is a high-value individual. Interested?" Antonov paused. How many people from the last squad stayed in Africa as mercenaries? "Only 11. Antonov replied without hesitation. The rest returned home after they were paid. Are you looking for them? No. I want a small team that understands family is a liability if things go wrong. You'll be operating in your home turf. The fallout could put your families at risk if our cover is blown. If you take it, I'll relocate your families to Switzerland or to England. If it's England, I'll arrange work and housing in Oxford. How many men can you trust who have families? Antonov considered, then said, 3 men I trust completely. All have parents, wives, children. They were the ones I relied on in the military. If you need more, I can recruit a few reliable younger men. Not necessary, William interrupted. 4 people total you included is enough. I don't want people I haven't fought with, and I prefer operators who have something to lose. Understood, sir, Antonov said, pleased by William's caution. A steady job and safety for his family meant more to him than a bigger payout. 3 days to prepare is fine. Send a plane to Moscow. I'll find a reason to leave the country. It's best to move my family to Switzerland before the action. Once there, someone will pick them up and take them to a resort. After the mission, my team and I will fly directly to Belarus with our families. Good, William said. Plane to Moscow in 3 days. We'll arrange everything for the families. Be ready. Yes, sir, Antonov replied. William ended the call and rubbed his eyes a moment, already assembling the next moves in his head. Once we cross into Belarus, we can push on to Lithuania and then loop back into Poland. That way, nobody will be able to trace us for a while. The only problem is money. That's a solid plan. Sounds like you've thought this through. There's no other way. Ever since we started going hungry, we've been planning an escape route. If we hadn't met you, we might already be fighting for someone else. William chuckled. The last time he'd hired Antonov and his men, it had been because they were cheap. But after working with them once, Antonov had made a good impression, which was why William had come back to him for this job. I'll put the money on the plane that picks you up. It's not a fortune, £250,000 per family as a resettlement fee, plus £50,000 for travel expenses. When you board the plane, you'll get a total of £1.2 million. What I can promise is that your families won't starve or be homeless. Whether you live in comfort after that is on you. Thank you, sir. That's more than enough. Antonov sounded relieved. The terms weren't extravagant, but they bought peace of mind. William preferred men with families. Concerned men were easier to satisfy when treated fairly. Someone will go to Moscow to brief you on the mission specifics. You'll follow their instructions. Understand? Understood, sir. Good. Goodbye. Goodbye, sir. After the call, William told Sunday to monitor flights arriving in Boston from the polar bear region over the next 48 hours and to keep an eye on any Boston police officers tied to that gang. That night, he was out for dinner with a beautiful Italian exchange student named Gina. He'd met her earlier while sightseeing, and they'd planned to go to the gym after. Halfway through the meal, Sunday's voice came through his earpiece. Sir, the corrupt Boston officer you wanted watched is driving to the airport. I checked landing requests. A private plane from the polar bear region is scheduled to touch down at Boston Airport at 2000 hours. William's smile hardened. He squeezed Gina's hand apologetically. It was great meeting you, Gina, but I've got work tonight, and I can't go shopping. You could bring your work to my dorm, she suggested with a wink. My roommate and I could help, and then we could have a drink. 2 of them together? William hesitated. Then she added, Luna's not just a Spanish beauty, she's a top management student at Boston University. That set off his alarm bells. He didn't believe a BU management star would volunteer to entertain strangers for free. If she did, there was probably an angle. William wasn't a lecherous kid. He didn't chase every attractive woman. Now that his instincts were triggered, he declined. Sorry, Gina. Tonight's not good. Maybe another time. He snapped his fingers, and the restaurant manager, who had been hovering nearby, crossed the room. Mr. Devonshire, how may I help you? Please see Miss Gina home. No problem, sir. I'll make sure she gets home safely. Good. The bill, please. Right away, sir. After seeing Gina off, William returned to his suite at the Four Seasons and asked Sunday, What did you find? I monitored Gina's phone. Nothing remarkable in the conversation. She says she met you by chance, but one name stood out, Madam. The madam who died, William's tone sharpened. There's too little information to confirm it's the same madam, Sunday replied. Time was short, so William didn't press. Where did the call go? A port in Asia, Hong Kong. That made his skin crawl. Someone from an unknown organization had reached out, and now an investigator from the polar bear side was on the ground in Boston. William's earlier detached curiosity about the polar bear incident had vanished. Pushkin's chief enforcer was in the city, and William's own exposure had just increased. Investigate them, he ordered. Find out who they are and what they want. I don't care how you do it, only that it's done. You have full authorization to use any means necessary. Understood, sir. Mission logged. Commencing. Sunday's voice went into business-like computation mode. Insufficient local compute. Retrieving idle resources across Boston. Retrieving. Commencing computation. Estimated time, 3 days. The electromechanical whir of the surveillance network ramping up grated on William. Servers and dormant hosts across the city powered on that night as Sunday quietly drew in every idle cycle. He tapped his earpiece to silence the status updates. He also had another problem that required immediate attention. He picked up the phone and called McCall. The line connected fast. Good evening, Mr. Devonshire, McCall said. Good evening. I've got bad news. The 5 men you killed the other day weren't just chauffeurs. They were the leaders of an East Coast base for a polar bear oligarch named Pushkin. Half an hour ago, a plane from the polar bear region delivered a man named Ted Lunson. He's here to investigate those deaths. In 2 hours, there'll be a plane leaving for the polar bear region. I want you to make sure Ted Lunson never gets to report back. My mission will be to go to the polar bear region and take out Pushkin, remove the financier, and all of this ends. You'll have a 4-man team to support you once you arrive. How you eliminate Pushkin is up to you. My only requirement, keep it clean. Understood. McCall didn't waste words. He knew a matter like this wouldn't stop until the mastermind was gone. He packed quickly, followed an SMS to a private suburban airfield, and, masked and hooded, gave the pilot the password. The pilot asked no questions. Please follow me, sir. Flight time, 9.5 hours. Thank you, McCall said and boarded. William watched him go, then headed down to the underground parking. He rode his Ducati R6 to the warehouse where the fake money was stored. Using his interface, an almost instinctive sweep of attention, he scanned the building for surprises. When nothing showed up, he changed into a dark outfit, hood and gloves, then took a dozen paper-cutting tools from the supply shelves. He opened a portal and stepped through, emerging inside the ventilation duct of Pushkin's money storage warehouse, the location he'd mapped out a few days earlier. He crawled through the passage into the warehouse, ignoring the money inside. First, he had to deal with the guards. No point moving tons of cash while being interrupted. Using his mental scan, William quickly mapped the situation. It was night. Only the guards were on site. The workers who counted the money and slaughtered the animals had already gone home, which suited him perfectly. He opened the vault door. Before the 4 thugs posted outside could react, flying knives put them down with a shot to the head. With Sunday having infiltrated the warehouse's main computer and disabled the cameras, William moved through the complex as if on a casual walk. Any thug who came within 50 meters found himself felled by a knife before he could even blink. 10 minutes later, William snapped the neck of the last guard. No incidents. Each of the men was dealt with silently. He opened a portal and dumped the bodies into the Oxford mine used for garbage disposal, then dragged out a hose and washed the blood from the floor. He wanted it to look like the guards had stolen the cash themselves. No bodies, no survivors, no witnesses. If no one was left alive at the scene, the disappearance would be pinned on them. No one would believe someone could quietly move several tons of cash. $100 million in 100 bills weighed, as Sunday calculated, 105 tons, impossible to move without inside help. Taking Sunday's advice, William left no loose ends. More than an hour later, after cleaning every trace of blood and disturbance, he walked into the money storage room. It was a mountain of cash. He had to stand a few minutes to steady himself. He tossed open a money bag and, using a portal, started transporting the sacks to the prop money warehouse. Then came the tedious work. He had to swap the real bills out of each bag and replace them with prop money. By the time the last bag was finished, it was past 5 in the morning. "I'm exhausted," William said, sitting atop the pile of real money, rubbing his aching temples from overusing his mental powers. Sunday reported, "Sir, if the $100 and $50 aren't mixed, there is a total of $6.3 billion in cash here." That was better than he'd hoped. Not as much as his wildest dreams, but $6.3 billion acquired for free put a grin on his face. After a short rest and a little recovery of his mental energy, he touched his cooling temples and joked, "I'm probably the most expensive mover in the world." "Apologies, sir. Definitely the most expensive mover," Sunday replied, once joking in return. He laughed, then eyed the small mountain of money beneath him and grimaced. "At least I don't have to switch the bills back into the bags. With my storage capacity, this should only take about 10 trips. $100 million is roughly 15 cubic meters. After half an hour more of rest, William packed his storage space to capacity, opened a portal to his treasure room in Oxford, and stacked the cash on top of the gold bars stored there. After 10 round trips, he had transferred every bag back to his castle. Back in Boston, following Sunday's instructions, William set up an electrical short-circuit mechanism in the sealed warehouse. According to Sunday's calculations, in about 43 hours, around midnight the day after tomorrow, the circuit would short out. Sparks would ignite paint. The exploding paint would spray onto the piles of prop money, and with a few ventilation windows left slightly open, the warehouse would burn like a blast furnace. With containers blocking the road outside, fire trucks wouldn't reach it in time. In less than 2 hours, the fake cash would be reduced to ash. The thugs would be gone, the money destroyed, and the warehouse had been rented by Sunday under a false identity online. No real leads, nothing to trace. With the Boston affair arranged, William felt the pressure lift. Half the mission was complete. The rest depended on what he could get from the Tarasov brothers in New York. He decided to unleash Ted, this hunting dog, on the Tarasovs to keep them off balance and to prevent the brothers from reneging. Things that come too easily aren't cherished, he thought. Besides, the trip to the U.S. had netted him a powerful enforcer for his castle and a huge haul of cash. It didn't matter that the money couldn't be openly deposited. Cash had its advantages. For clandestine matters, cash was both more convenient and safer than bank transfers. He went back to his hotel, cleaned up, and collapsed on the bed. At 4 in the afternoon, after a full 10 hours sleep, he woke refreshed, ordered a double helping of French food, ate his fill, and sat on the balcony sipping wine while Sunday updated him. Ted had been careful since arriving in Boston. He kept no indoor cameras where he lived. Without them, Sunday was somewhat blind. William asked, "Has word spread about the missing guards and money?" "Not yet, sir," Sunday replied. The workers were probably too scared of the polar bear gang to wait. They left after 2 hours. "Heh," William said. Those workers wouldn't dare call the police. It would be a miracle if they didn't know what the warehouse was for. After a beat, he added, "Call Viggo Tarasov in New York and tell him it's time to act. Don't sit idle. Ted will report the missing money and guards to Pushkin and demand reinforcements." "Do you think Pushkin will suspect Viggo and his men?" "According to my calculations, the probability is about 70%, Sunday answered after a pause. "No, 100%, William cut in. "You still don't get human nature. When a huge sum vanishes without a trace, Pushkin will suspect anyone. He could even suspect Ted Lenson. If Pushkin starts digging, he'll secretly send people to the U.S. Then the New York underworld will be in turmoil. As quasi-allies, we should warn Viggo so he can prepare. Once Viggo prepares his men, his unusual behavior won't remain hidden. An internal conflict in the polar bear gang will be inevitable. Under pressure, Viggo will come begging for help. He'll beg us to remove Pushkin, and only then will he truly be willing to give up everything." He took a sip of whiskey. "Send a message to that scurrying hunting dog Ted, telling him the head of the warehouse guards, Andre, has betrayed him and that his boss's money is gone." "Understood, sir." Message sent to Frank, the dirty cop in Boston. Things unfolded exactly as William had predicted. After Frank relayed the message, Ted Lenson rushed to the warehouse with 3 corrupt Boston cops. Finding both the guards and the money gone, Ted panicked for a moment. He calmed down, then had Frank and the others question workers and locals. No one reported a gunfight the previous night. The information suggested Andre and the guards might indeed have rebelled. Ted imagined Pushkin's reaction at the news that several hundred million had been spirited away by rebelling subordinates. After agonizing hesitation, he took out his phone and dialed Pushkin. Chapter 295. Vigo says he'll never be anyone's dog again. Any news about the outpost? Pushkin asked as soon as the phone clicked to life. There was a long pause. Then Ted said, "I'm very sorry, Mr. Pushkin, but things aren't what we thought. The 5 men at the outpost, including Slavic, were likely silenced, because all the cash in the warehouse and Andre's whole crew are gone." "Say that again. The money and the people are gone?" Pushkin's voice sharpened with disbelief. "The money that's transferred every 6 months, along with Andre and his men, all disappeared overnight," Ted repeated, his tone grim. Pushkin did not erupt in anger. He didn't panic. He sounded controlled and cold. "Tell me everything you know," he said. Ted felt his heart hammer at the thought that crossed his mind, but he forced himself steady. He organized what he had learned and spoke carefully. "Andre's group vanished last night. People nearby didn't hear gunshots or trucks. I searched the warehouse thoroughly. No signs of a firefight, no blood, no struggle. My best read is that this wasn't a sudden external assault. They must have been planning to betray us for some time. Slavic probably discovered something and was taken out, killed by a hitman Andre hired. My arrival made them panic. They cleared out overnight." "How much cash was in the warehouse?" Pushkin ground out. He needed facts. "I don't know the exact sum, sir. Andre handled the warehouse. Vigo Tarasov managed the transfers. Only the two of them knew the figure. But from past records, it shouldn't be less than 500 million US dollars. Ted hesitated, then added, "Mr. Pushkin, is it possible Vigo Tarasov is involved?" "No," Pushkin said immediately. "Vigo's been loyal all these years. He's never slipped up. Part of that money belongs to him." Pushkin fell silent after that. He had trusted Vigo with significant sums and bribery networks in New York, authority he could not exercise himself from the Arctic Bear. Now, against $500 million, the tens of millions Pushkin had entrusted Vigo felt small. If Vigo had decided to bolt with that kind of money, he could carve out his own operation in the U.S. Pushkin's doubts hardened into a decision. "I'll send people to New York," he said at last. "Don't worry about Boston right now. Tie up what loose ends you can here, then go to New York. My men will join you. Investigate Vigo. If he's involved, eliminate him." Ted swallowed down the elation welling up inside and kept his voice low. Understood. That was the outcome he'd wanted. If Vigo wasn't involved yet, Ted intended to force him to be. He no longer wanted to be only a hound. He wanted to rise. He wanted power. When the call ended, Ted turned back to Frank and the other crooked cops. "It's all right," he said casually. Andre got nervous that the place might be compromised, so he moved out quietly on Mr. Pushkin's orders. Frank and the 3 officers let out relief. Nothing had spiraled completely out of control, they thought. "Let's go. We still have things to do," Ted said, leading them out of the warehouse. By the time they reached the outpost, it was already noon. "Let's eat first," Ted suggested. They went into a private room at a restaurant. Ted ordered food and, after taking a few sips of wine, announced, "I'll go pick out a bottle of vodka. We'll taste it later." Frank and the others exchanged looks. Ted's sudden chummy behavior was odd, but when he returned with a bottle and poured, their suspicions eased as he drank along with them. He filled half glasses for each of the 3 men and raised his own. "Mr. Pushkin hopes we can cooperate sincerely to find the culprit and reopen the Boston business. You're lucky to be trusted by him at a time like this," Ted said. "Heh." Frank and the others relaxed and clinked glasses with him. "Don't worry, we'll find whoever did this. Cheers." They downed their drinks. The mood lightened, but before the main course arrived, Frank's tongue went numb. "Why is this vodka so strong? I haven't drunk much, and I'm already feeling woozy," he complained. The other 2 reached for words and found their limbs heavy and unresponsive. Panic flashed across their faces as they looked at Ted, who remained steady and smiling, lifting his glass without issue. "Why are you fine when you drank more than us?" Frank demanded, words slurring. "Idiots," Ted said coldly. He pulled a small syringe from his pocket and tossed it onto the table. This is the antidote to the anesthetic. I just jabbed my leg with it, he grinned. 10 years ago, I was in the secret police. I learned a trick in the academy. He rose, moved behind the nearest man, and still smiling said, "All right, it's your time to go. Blame yourselves for knowing too much." The man tried to struggle, but the anesthetic had robbed him of strength. With 3 quick twists, Ted snapped the necks of Frank and the other 2. He straightened his coat, walked out of the private room, and gave orders to the gang members waiting outside. "Strip those 3 and dump them in Irish territory. Tell the Irish it's a warning. Behave, or we'll make war." Understood," the subordinate stammered. Ted liked the fear in his voice and hauled the man close by the collar. "Have you found the 2 missing girls I asked about?" he demanded. "Sorry, sir. We combed our turf for 2 days. No sign. I think they've fled Boston." "Keep looking. If you haven't found them in a week, I'll throw you to the sharks," Ted said, squeezing the man's collar until he promised. "Understood. Send a car. Take me to New York." After lunch, Ted climbed into a Mercedes SUV. He lay back in the rear seat and closed his eyes. Although he had given himself the antidote, the anesthetic still had lingering effects. He decided not to confront Vigo immediately. He would rest for a night to clear his head and ensure his skills weren't compromised. That choice bought Vigo, who had already received word, more than 10 hours to prepare. As Ted arrived in New York and arranged to lie low, Vigo Tarasov was quietly meeting his brother Abram at a nightclub, setting his own plans in motion. Chapter 296. Being second best isn't without its advantages. "So you're really going to do it yourself?" Abram asked, alarmed. "Vigo, are you crazy? Pushkin and those Americans aren't going to let us off the hook." "What if Pushkin dies?" Vigo Tarasov said quietly. "Someone's after Pushkin. If Pushkin is taken out, the big shots in New York will just spend the money, and the Continental will take care of the rest. Once it's done, I'll hand over the whole smuggling and oil operation to you. You only give me 40% a month." 40%? Abram stared at his older brother, reassessing the man he'd always thought soft. After a long silence, he said, "I never thought you had it in you." He sank onto the sofa and ran the numbers in his head. He'd been surrendering 80% of the profits before. If he only had to give 40% this time, he'd be keeping 60, double his take. Money made Abram's mouth go dry. "Do you really mean it? Will they actually take out Pushkin?" Vigo smiled without humor. "Abram, let's not pretend. If anything happens to me, do you think Pushkin will show mercy? People back home don't do mercy. They eliminate everyone connected to their enemies. You're my blood. If I fall, you won't escape either. Even if you run and hide, your best case is a new name and a life on the run. Don't forget how many crews we pissed off in New York. The moment we lose power, there will be a line of people ready to make a name for themselves on our corpses." Abram understood that reality. He'd seen it before. Fallen bosses were live bait for the ambitious. Seeing Abram start to waver, Vigo shifted tactics. He lowered his head as if ashamed, and when he looked up, there were actually tears in his eyes. "What the hell?" Abram muttered. Vigo's voice broke. "Abram, I have to stand on my own now. Ilisov was taken hostage. A few days ago, someone put a gun to my head and forced me to say things against Pushkin. They were coming for you too, but I managed to push them off. Otherwise, you think they'd spare you and your children? They've been watching us for a long time." Abram, while not fully trusting Vigo's story, accepted that they were being targeted. Together, the brothers were already the strongest gang in New York. Turning them would have Pushkin's influence. "Who's really behind this?" Abram asked finally. "Is the person worth siding with?" "No more allegiances," Vigo said, relieved. "From now on, we answer to ourselves. After it's done, I'll give half my fortune to whoever backs us as recompense. If they want more, I'll give everything. But I won't be anyone's dog again." Abram watched his brother and finally understood. This wasn't about family or profit. It was about power. Vigo wanted to be king of New York's underworld, and he would team with devils, betray his boss, use his son's life as leverage, and use his brother and nephew as bargaining chips if needed. Abram felt disgusted at the lust for power. He knew he'd have to keep his distance, otherwise he might become an obstacle to be removed. "All right," he said after a moment. "What do you need me to do?" Those words lifted something in Vigo. With Abram on his side, the odds shifted. Viggo stood and went to the duffel bags by the sofa. They were heavy. He managed one and then gave up, kicking the others aside. He opened a briefcase on the table. Inside were stacks of bills and a small wooden box of continental gold coins. "There's $20 million here and 200 continental gold coins," Viggo said solemnly. "No one should be watching you right now. Take this to the Continental and post a job to eliminate anyone who stands in our way." Abram nearly jumped out of his skin. "You can't be serious. Even the Continental wouldn't take that on officially. Killing a few people maybe, but a full-scale move against the New York underworld? They'd be targeted by every force here. They won't break their own rules for us." "Then find Winston privately, the hotel manager," Viggo snapped. "I don't believe he doesn't have people who take private jobs. As long as it doesn't hit the hotel's official assassin channel, it won't drag the Continental into it. Tell him I'll repay him. I'll do 3 favors for him for free if I have to." Abram hesitated. "Enough with the buts," Viggo bellowed, stepping closer, his stare cutting. "We're talking about the Tarasov family's survival. Rules only matter when we're alive to follow them. If we don't survive, rules are worthless. Do you want your son dead and your daughter on the streets? Do you?" That hit. Abram's face tightened. "Fine, let's do it. Whoever wants to kill us, we'll kill them first. I'll even open my taxi network to Winston for free." "Good. That's how it should be." Viggo's voice softened, almost conspiratorial. "After this, I'll back you to consolidate the taxis in New York. You'll become the city's second information king after the Bowery King." "Really?" Abram's eyes lit up. "Of course. Who else would I make my patron but my brother?" Viggo nodded, inwardly calculating. Giving Abram the taxi business, a low-profit, messy operation, would keep him busy and grateful, while Viggo held the more lucrative oil and smuggling trades. The New York taxi racket was hard to fully absorb. Even half would be a victory. But if Abram controlled the flow of information in the underworld, he might become indispensable to the real power players. That thought gave Viggo pause. When had his reckless brother become so canny? Was he flattering or planning? Either way, the arrangement might just save Viggo's life later. "Do you have confidence, future king of information?" Viggo asked. "As long as I've got your backing and the profits from smuggling and oil, I can bring the taxis together." Abram grinned. "Whatever you want to know, tell me, and I'll get it for you." Viggo felt a rare relief. "Good. Time's short. Go see Winston now. Go early, before someone else gets to him." "Understood." The brothers each hefted 2 of the duffel bags and the briefcase toward the elevator. The car rode down to the underground lot, and they struggled to load the duffels and the box of gold coins into Abram's sedan. "I never knew $5 million could weigh so much," Viggo muttered as he slammed the trunk shut. Chapter 297, 200 gold coins, 200 missions, 200 lives. "Haha, Viggo, you don't know this, but $10 million weighs about 105 kilograms. Unless you're a superhero, nobody's carrying $5 million in cash around," Abram laughed. "Those movies where people casually tote 5 or 10 million? Total fiction." Viggo flushed with embarrassment. "All right, let's get down to business." "Understood." Abram nodded, opened the car door, climbed in, started the engine, and rolled down the window. "Wait for my good news." "Okay," Viggo called after him. "Be discreet. I'll wait." After Abram left, Viggo stayed in the parking lot, watching the car turn and disappear with a faint hopefulness. As long as he had Winston on his side, getting rid of his enemies would be far easier. Driving out, Abram began cursing under his breath, then louder. "Damn you, Viggo. Do you think I'm an idiot? If you'd driven me into a corner, only a fool would risk his neck for a bastard like you. You want to be the underground king? The day you get there is the day you meet the devil. You." He kept up the string of insults until a chuckle cut through his anger. "But there's an upside. Link up with Winston and I won't have to worry about assassins anymore. In New York, no hitman disobeys the Continental's manager. Not being the public boss has its perks. Quiet money is the safest money." Everyone stares at the front man. Nobody notices the perpetual second. With the boss in front, second place doesn't look like a threat. Abram smiled to himself. "In the gang, I'll put Viggo out front. In the intelligence world, I've got Bowery King, that big-toothed operator, holding the top. Me, I'll be the permanent second. Bowery King, Viggo, fools care about fame. But in the underworld, being famous makes you a target. I'll play both sides, keep my head down, take the small jobs. Being a dog isn't prestigious. I'll be a rat. Rats hidden in the sewers stay alive because no respectable official wants to crawl after them. If William had read Abram's thoughts, he'd have called him a genius, cold, calculating, and admirably self-preserving. Half an hour later, Abram arrived at the Continental. He handed a gold coin to the side entrance guard, pulled into the lot, and waited while a valet fetched Charon, the concierge. "Good evening, Mr. Tarasov. How may I help you?" Charon's manners were impeccable. Abram stayed in the car. "Good evening, Mr. Charon. For certain reasons, I'd prefer not to be seen getting out. I'm here to see the manager. Winston, is he in?" Charon gave a quick nod and signaled the iron gate open. Abram drove into the private parking and stepped out with a small briefcase. Charon's eyes lingered on it. He couldn't help patting it with one hand. It was obvious the briefcase was heavy, certainly full of gold coins. "Please follow me, Mr. Tarasov. The manager is seeing guests on the top floor. I'll inform him. Whether he receives you is his decision." "That's fine," Abram said. "Also, there are 4 backpacks in my car. Please have someone bring them up." "Of course." Charon led him to a private elevator and up to the top floor reception. He poured Abram a cup of coffee and smiled. "Please wait a moment. I'll let the manager know." Abram settled onto a couch and tried to steady his nerves, measuring the bargaining chips he and Viggo could offer if Winston refused the terms. Before long, the distant thump of helicopter blades reached them. Whoever was here could land on the roof. From Charon's earlier tone, it sounded like Winston himself was on hand. Abram rose and pushed the conference room door, but 2 burly bodyguards blocked his way. "Apologies, sir, but for confidentiality reasons, you can't exit through here." He went back to his seat, trying not to look impatient. The 2 guards entered the conference room, scanned the space, nodded, and shut the door. 2 hours passed. At last there was a knock. Charon returned, smiling. "Mr. Tarasov, Mr. Winston is ready to see you. Please follow me." Abram picked up the briefcase and walked down a long corridor with Charon. They stepped out into the rooftop garden. The September night was cool. A breeze loosened the tension in Abram's shoulders. Winston stood talking with a young man whose back was to him. At the sight of Abram, Winston excused the young man and came forward. After shaking Abram's hand, Winston greeted him smoothly. "Good evening, Mr. Tarasov. What can I do for you?" Abram hesitated. The garden was open and not ideal for sensitive talk. Winston, however, waved him to a round table a short distance away. "If it's important, let's sit." Abram set the briefcase on the table and unclipped it. Rows of continental gold coins gleamed under the soft lights. Winston's eyebrows rose. "I didn't expect you two to have this many hotel coins. If I recall correctly, your crews haven't been posting missions on the board. Where did these come from?" "Please don't misunderstand," Abram said quickly. "Viggo and I haven't posted missions ourselves. We do cooperate with the hotel sometimes, intelligence gathering, handling certain local problems. Our taxi company has been useful for moving people discreetly." Charon, standing nearby, chimed in with a nod. "Mr. Tarasov's taxis have been reliable. We use them for some sensitive transfers. He follows the rules." Winston smiled faintly. "I like people who follow rules. Speak plainly, young Tarasov. If this is within the hotel's purview, I'll do what I can." Abram's throat tightened. He'd come to break rules, not abide by them. He swallowed and plunged ahead. "This concerns Viggo's and my lives. I've brought 200 continental gold coins and $20 million. We want your support to deal with some problems." Winston tilted his head. "Problems?" Winston's calm darkened. 200 gold coins? That's 200 missions. A few problems don't merit that." Abram met his gaze. 200 coins mean 200 posted missions. With 20 million cash, that equates to 200 lives at stake. If I accept the contract openly, the high table will notice. It won't be long before they start asking questions. He pushed his hands flat on the table. "Could this be handled privately? Or, if you won't act directly, could you give us the names so Viggo and I can contact them ourselves? In return, when it's done, we'll hand over our intelligence network to you and we'll negotiate any other terms you want." Winston listened without interrupting. The young man who had been at his side watched from a short distance, face unreadable. Abram's words hung between them, heavy as the coins in the briefcase. Any requests? Abram started at the voice and turned to see the young man who had been sitting quietly in the reception area, standing behind him, the same man who'd introduced himself as William Devonshire. Winston gave a soft, amused sigh at William's impishness and shook his head with a chuckle. Interested, are you? Ha ha, my dear Winston, William said, smiling. I'm not just interested in them. I'm interested in Pushkin, too. What's behind them? Hello, Mr. Abram Tarasov. My name is William Devonshire. I'm an Englishman. It's a shame we couldn't meet in Boston a few days ago because of unforeseen circumstances. Chapter 298, Your Life is Mine. Abram's puzzled look earned him a laugh. A few days ago, I sent John Wick to meet your brother Viggo in Boston, hoping to get the two of you together to discuss matters of mutual interest. Pushkin? Abram repeated. Yes, I have my issues with Mr. Pushkin's methods, but I didn't know how to reach him. I sent people to his stronghold in Boston. The contact didn't go well or go through cleanly, so my people went to Moscow to speak to him face to face. Communication, my foot. The thought landed in Abram like a cold stone. He'd suspected this young man was the architect of the disruption that had driven him and Viggo away from their old association, calling it communication, when in fact he'd sent people to deliver one-way tickets to hell. Not only had their men been killed, but their boss had been targeted. The intent was obvious: swallow the whole gang. Abram felt the trap close. If he refused William now, he wouldn't be leaving the Continental alive. He straightened, forced a warning into his voice. Mr. Devonshire, even if you secure our support, you won't be able to truly control the Northern Bear Gang. William narrowed his eyes and smiled with an almost clinical calm. No, Abram, you misunderstand. My appetite isn't that large. I'm not interested in running your organization. It's messy, it isn't profitable enough for the trouble, and it's despised by respectable society. It's like kasu marzu cheese. Expensive, yes, but crawling with maggots. I can't eat that. Abram's hope sank. A gang that pulled in hundreds of millions, maybe over $1 billion, was beneath this man's attention. What did a man like William Devonshire want then? He forced the question. Mr. Devonshire, just tell me what you want. I need an agent, William said, smiling but with a cold edge. I understand Viggo Tarasov keeps the ledger, the record of your bribes across the East Coast. I want a copy. Abram went pale. That ledger was the most guarded secret they had. Even he only knew fragments. How did you? Don't worry about how I know, William cut in. I want a backup. You'll assist me when I call on you. As for Winston, what you offered is acceptable. Hand over control of your intelligence network and give Winston 30% of the organization's profits for the next 5 years. That shouldn't be too much to ask, right? Abram glanced at Winston for a sign. Winston shrugged. He didn't yet know why William was making these demands, but he trusted the man and could see advantage. 30% now was better than the 80% Pushkin would have demanded. More important, William wasn't trying to strip them of internal power. Abram nodded without further protest. All right. Excellent. William's satisfaction was quiet. I'd celebrate with a drink, he said, looking around, but I imagine that's not appropriate. He addressed Charon. Could you fetch Mr. John Wick, please? Certainly, Mr. Devonshire. Charon bowed and left. A few minutes later, John Wick, immaculate in a new suit and with his hair slicked back, was led into the penthouse garden by Charon. He approached smoothly and greeted William and Winston. Good evening, Mr. Devonshire. Mr. Winston. Good evening, John, Winston replied with a smile. I hear you found a girlfriend. It took a moment for John to react. This was a man who killed with the same expression he used to read a menu, and then a bashful flush crept across his face. Yes, sir, he said quietly. I never thought someone like me could find true love. Helen, she's my angel. She brought light into my dark life. William's impatience surfaced. He'd been somewhat unsettled by Wick's choice in a partner, Yuri Orlov's ex-wife, and the fact that the stone-faced killer actually looked happy made William uneasy. He stepped forward. John, this is Abram Tarasov, Viggo Tarasov's brother. They have some problems that need handling. Any issues with taking a job? No, sir, John replied promptly, though there was a flicker of hesitation on his face. William went on for Abram. John Wick is the Continental's finest. He can deal with opponents, anything that needs killing. He offered that like a professional reference. Abram looked John over, immaculate, almost model-like, and found it hard to reconcile the appearance with William's words. "I can't decide this on my own," he said. "I need to check with Vigo." William nodded, not offended. It concerned their lives. A little caution was expected. Abram apologized to William, pulled out his phone, and walked to the corner of the garden to call his brother. John stayed where he was until Abram disappeared, then looked at William with a troubled expression. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. William watched him for a long beat. The look on John's face, combined with what William already suspected, made a memory flash through William's mind. Suddenly he snapped, "Damn, you're thinking about retiring." John's head jerked up. He hadn't expected William to read him so cleanly. Over the past few days, ever since William had told him about Helen, John had turned the idea over and over in his head. After more than a decade as an assassin, wariness had set into him. He met William's gaze and, steadying himself, confessed, "Sir, I pray this mission will be my last. After it's done, I hope to retire and marry Helen." He took a breath, and the steel in his voice went softer as he spoke of his past. "I was an orphan at 5. I grew up with people who trained me like a tool, not like a child. From killing my first sheep at 5 to my first mission and first kill at 15, I became a thing made for killing. Now in my 30s, after nearly 20 years, I feel like nothing but a machine. Helen is the only person who made me feel alive. I want to live a life outside of that." He said it plainly, without pleading. He looked at William as though laying down a truth. William's expression darkened slowly. Before John could step back, William was suddenly in front of him, close enough that no one saw him move. In one motion, he seized John by the throat and lifted him clean off the ground. Wick went limp, like a fish hauled from water, eyes wide but not daring to struggle. "You seem to have forgotten, John Wick," William said quietly, his voice like ice. "Your life is mine." Chapter 299, My Life is Yours. Abram, who had just finished his call with Vigo, walked back with newfound confidence. Vigo had told him the same story he'd told Winston, how John had fought from the nightclub rooftop down to the ground floor, slaughtering Pushkin's embedded pawns around Vigo, and then swaggering out of the club with Vigo's son, Iosef. Even with his son kidnapped, Vigo had admitted John Wick was a superlative operator. That conviction made Abram eager and certain he could hire Wick. He had taken only a few steps when he saw the impossible. The man he'd hoped to secure for his brother's problems being half-strangled and dangling in the grip of the seemingly harmless William Devonshire. Witnessing John Wick go slack, unable to move, Abram's shock wiped the words from his mouth. He stared at William, terror replacing the excitement he'd carried just moments before. Winston and Charon, who were closest, were as stunned as Abram by how fast William had moved. They had an idea of William's skill, but never expected him to be so quick that a man couldn't even react. John Wick, who had felt it firsthand, could only describe the sensation as if the world had turned into a storm. He had blinked and already found himself controlled with one hand. Feeling the pressure of William's palm against his throat, John knew perfectly well that if William wanted to, he could snap his neck like a twig in an instant. John, a man who knew the human body inside out, dared not struggle. Any sudden movement from his 90-kilogram frame could twist his own neck under those conditions. That was why Abram and Winston read his lack of resistance as near submission. Only Charon, another seasoned professional, understood the wisdom of keeping still. If John had tried to draw his gun, his neck would have been broken before he could get the weapon free. After the shock wore off, the pain and the tightening in his throat forced John to act. He pressed both hands to William's wrist to pry it away, reduced the downward pressure on his cervical spine, and finally drew a sharper breath. He forced himself to speak. "Mr. Devonhill, I didn't mean to betray you. It's a misunderstanding." William kept his eyes on John's face, distorted by pain and full of desperate pleading. He narrowed his eyes. "I don't think it's a misunderstanding. The way you looked at me, just now, made me sick. I could read your thoughts. Love has clouded your mind. You've lost reason. You think you can go against the whole world." "Wait, William. Put Wick down first." Winston, who had lived long enough to know how these things turned, cut in. He could see where William was headed. Harsh words, possibly irreversible rage. If William snapped at John now, it could estrange him from a valuable man and lead to outcomes that no one wanted. Above all, attention from the high table. Killing a man inside the Continental would bring consequences Winston did not want to invite. Better to hear him out. William hesitated. He could have broken John's neck and ended the matter, but that brought no obvious benefit. John Wick was still useful. If he truly intended to retire, there was value to be wrung from him. Besides, the rules of the Continental and the High Table's likely response were not things William would throw away lightly. He released his grip, rose to the sofa, and sat, letting Winston's intervention cool him. He smiled inwardly as he considered options. He could always recruit Carlos the Cross from Switzerland or check up on that money-hungry Colin who trained like a zealot. He was interrupted by John's uneven coughing. John bent over, clutching his throat, taking greedy, shallow breaths until they turned into violent hacking fits. William didn't rush him. He indicated the sofa beside him for Abram, who shrank back but obeyed when Winston gave the nod. Abram sat with an ingratiating expression. Being under someone else's roof meant keeping one's head down. After several coughing fits, John recovered enough to stand. He bowed his head, glanced warily at William, who had refilled and taken a drink, and then, silently, bent his right knee as if to kneel. Before he could get down, a sudden, forceful shove sent John stumbling back a dozen paces. A glass clattered from somewhere, skittered and rolled a few times before settling, catching everyone's eyes. John's heel found a raised step, and he steadied himself just in time. "I am not your parent," William said coldly. "I'm not an emperor, and I'm not the heavens above, so I don't like people kneeling, especially you, John Wick. No one you ever knelt to ended well." William's contempt was layered with private irritation. He couldn't understand the habit of kneeling. To him it signaled weakness. "Kneeling doesn't mean submission to me," he went on. "I prefer reason. If reason fails, then we use guns and knives." He smiled thinly, toyed with his glass, and asked, "Tell me, John Wick, is your life mine?" John, grateful that William had spared the public shame of being forced to kneel, nodded quickly. "Yes, Mr. Devonhill, my life is yours." "Very good." William's expression softened, but not much. "I am not unreasonable. Your life may belong to me, but you are not my slave." He watched John with a cool, appraising look. "But keep your promises." William knew as well as anyone that saving John didn't entitle him to treat him as property. What angered him was the look John had given him, the challenge behind those eyes. It was one thing for a man to walk away from his profession for love. It was another to turn on the man who had protected and employed him. To William, these underworld agreements were simple transactions, useful while they served a purpose, and burdensome once they didn't. Promises could be preserved or discarded like tools. John thought for a moment, steadying himself, then spoke quietly. "Mr. Devonhill, if I retire, I will still serve you. I can be the family's hidden guardian. I'll take Helen to Oxford, find work there, live as an ordinary man. When the family or the castle is threatened, I will act." William listened, weighing the offer. For all the emotion that had clouded John's judgment, the man still offered a useful plan: concealment, normalcy, and deadly readiness if needed. That was the kind of bargain William could respect. Silently, the room shifted around them. Winston relieved, Charon watchful, Abram relieved that the man he feared had not been broken. Outside, the rules and reputation of the Continental hung like a promise none of them could afford to break. Within, deals were cleaned and recalibrated, and life, grim, transactional, and without pretension, went on. This time, John Wick answered quickly. He understood that a man like him, without power or protection, could never expect a quiet life, even in retirement. But he was clever and had plans of his own. William, however, wasn't foolish either. He was a little surprised that John wanted to retire to Oxford, and instinctively uneasy at the idea of keeping someone like John close to the castle. Just looking at John's face, so like fat keys, made William restless. Men like him seemed born to attract trouble. William feared that before he could protect the Devonshire family, one of John's enemies might come calling, or some other powerful interest tied to John Wick would turn its attention to him. At that point, he wouldn't know who was protecting whom. Besides, William remembered John's mercurial girlfriend, later his wife, later to die of cancer. He would be insane to invite that kind of trouble into the castle. He already disliked the woman, Ava Fontaine Orlov, now called Helen, intensely. Thinking of that, William shook his head. But he still needed John to handle the Arctic bear situation. "You'd be wasted as a castle bodyguard," William said kindly. "My identity is sensitive. I'll leave the dealings with Vigo and the Tarasov crew to you. That shouldn't be difficult." That line made it clear. William had excluded John from his inner circle. The 30% cut from the Arctic Bear Gang was ostensibly paid to Winston. The only outsider who knew about William's relationship with Winston was Charon. From now on, at least on paper, William would have no connection to the Arctic Bear Gang. That was not what John wanted. He'd hoped to be under William's protection, but William was cautious to the point of suspicion. Still, handling the Arctic Bear Gang wasn't beyond John, and the connection made him safer in New York going forward. Given the situation, John bowed his head and agreed. He dared not show any disloyalty. He couldn't beat William, and he wanted to retire with Helen, which was his ultimate weakness. "Understood, sir," he said. "With you involved, the books won't be a problem, right, Mr. Tarasov?" William asked softly of Abram. "Of course, Mr. Devonshire. I'll cooperate with John gladly," Abram said quickly. Even if he had other ideas, he wasn't about to voice them now. Once Abram agreed, William had plenty of ways to ensure the Tarasov brothers kept their word. If they disobeyed, William could simply go to war. A regional gang was nothing to him. With Sunday around, finding people was easy. Once you knew where a gang leader was, killing him wasn't hard. No ordinary person could evade Carlos the Cross's sniper. The only complication was that killing a leader would throw the underworld into chaos, and some officials might be displeased. That was where Brian Mills would come in. A New York councilman wasn't a major power, but that status made it easier to grease palms and shape political optics. William wanted whatever evidence the Tarasovs held as a trump card, something that made people cautious. As long as Brian handled things sensibly, the city's elites wouldn't push for a scorched earth response. "We've discussed it. You two should get ready. Move quickly and seize the initiative. Don't let the Tarasovs lose sleep and appetite over this." After a few perfunctory goodbyes to Abram, William instructed Charon to prepare 2 Level 3 bulletproof suits as gifts for the Tarasov brothers before they left, a ceremonial meeting present. Charon's explanation of the suits pleased Abram. They could stop most handgun rounds. Abram still flinched at the cost when Charon mentioned the price, but he agreed to buy 2 sets for their safety. With the 2 sets William was handing over as a gesture, they'd be fine for now. When Winston and William were alone, Winston shook his head and smiled. "You're a crafty businessman. Those level 3 suits don't stop rifle fire. I remember you quoted them at £2 million apiece. That's under $2.5 million. So the ones you gave weren't really free, and you even made the Tarasovs feel grateful." William grinned. "My dear Winston, nobody values something they get for nothing. If they pay for it, even painfully, they'll take it seriously and wear it every day. I'm helping them stay alive so they can keep making money for us. It'd be a shame if they died before we reaped the benefits." Winston rolled his eyes at William's mix of avarice and apparent righteousness. "Do you really want to get into business with the Tarasovs? Don't forget who you are. If your dealings with them become public, it won't be good for you." "I don't care if it's only 200 or 300 million in black money a year," William said. "You can handle collecting it. There's something they have I want, but it's not time to bring it up. If we show our hand now, Vigo would extort us, and the timing is wrong." Winston listened, then leaned closer. "If I were you, I'd steer clear of the trucking unions." William had been explaining his plan. Since he decided to take out Pushkin, he'd been weighing what he could gain from Vigo Tarasov. He couldn't get involved in old-style gang rackets. That wouldn't benefit him. Buying cash and an intelligence network while letting Vigo keep a big gang felt too cheap. But the Arctic Bear Gang controlled a transportation company that held almost 40% of market share in 7 or 8 large cities and a dozen medium ones on the northern East Coast. That was tempting. Winston cut him off. "Don't touch the trucking unions. They can sway local votes. You can't deal with them unless you're native power or a huge gang. If you try to use the Arctic Bear Gang to guard your interests, you'll have to let them get involved. And once a gang is involved, your reputation's ruined. If you try to do it without them, the unions will chew you up. In their eyes, you'll be the fattest sheep. They'll squeeze you until there's nothing left, and they won't care if your company goes under. Trust me, William, stay out of this industry. Winston stood and sat next to him, lowering his voice. American unions are degenerate in many places now. Many are semi-open criminal organizations. Trucking unions are the worst. Even if you think you can make big money, don't go into it. It's not just thankless, it's a target. People who bear grudges can make trouble with hardly any effort. Someone waits on a lonely road and opens fire, and your company's future is gone. Look at the Greyhound buses in the US. People have been ambushed on the roads. William fell silent for a moment, weighing Winston's warning. The profit was alluring, but the risk was real. The conversation left the future of his plan hanging, tempting, dangerous, and possibly doomed before it even began. Chapter 301. A business that collapsed before it even began. William didn't need to investigate. Sunday had briefed him thoroughly, and after listening, he found himself oddly sympathetic toward Viggo and Abram Tarasov. He thought about it for a long moment, then gave a helpless nod. All right, I'll consider it. I didn't expect the guild people to be this talented. With corruption this deep, no wonder fewer people are joining. He had planned to take advantage of cheap land prices to buy property in the US and replicate China's logistics system, but he was already backing down before he'd even begun. Still, he muttered, I don't like letting Viggo and Abram off so easily. Winston's expression sharpened. Why? What did you intend in the first place? He watched the stubborn line return to William's mouth. Don't tell me you weren't behind what happened at that warehouse in Boston, silently taking out all the guards. Besides a few specialized organizations, I can't think of anyone but you. You had the skill, and you were in Boston these last few days. William averted his eyes. Winston allowed himself a small, rueful laugh. Your ambush was very well executed. If I didn't know you, I'd have been fooled myself. But now that it's out of the way, you should go back to Oxford immediately. You covered things well, but not everything needs proof. You have a pattern. Wherever you show up, trouble follows. Once people clear their heads, they'll pin this on you. Even if those who lost bribe money can't pursue you legally, you can forget about investing in the US for a while. You'll have to wait until Viggo satisfies everyone and things die down. Winston lowered his voice. No matter how capable you are, you can only deal with a few people. They're an interest group. Anyone who threatens that interest becomes an enemy, and some people in Washington have ways of dealing with enemies that are far more ruthless than ours. William shrugged. They have no evidence. What can they do? Winston shook his head. They couldn't do much legally, but remember this. You keep turning up in the US, and the same kinds of incidents keep happening. After a few more, you'll be labeled a source of chaos by some people at the top. You won't want to be denied entry to the US, would you? He burst into laughter. By the way, it seems you've been permanently banned from Montenegro. William cursed quietly and rubbed his forehead. His trips to the US seemed to attract disaster. A few more incidents, and it would be much harder to come here. At the very least, the FBI would be watching him closely. He needed distance from the split in the Polar Bear Gang. He tapped his ear and said, Sunday, prepare a plane. I'm going to Los Angeles. Also check if there are any notable sporting events in the next 2 days. I want people to think I'm here for leisure. It's September, Sunday replied. No NBA. Aside from that, baseball and football, American football, is the main thing. The Triple Crown was in June. If it's football, I won't understand it. William shook his head. Book me a table at Restaurant 11 on Madison Avenue. If there's no game, I'll go out for dinner with a pretty woman. He rose to leave. Sorry, Winston, I'm going to meet a girl. I can't have dinner with you. Winston reluctantly stood and hugged him. Have fun, kid. Maybe the next Divine Hill heir will be conceived tonight. William rolled his eyes but lied to stop the teasing. I'll try. He released Winston and left. Once the elevator closed, Winston looked at Karen with some bewilderment. Am I that unpopular with him? Karen smiled. Sir, Mr. Divinehill doesn't want you talking about children again. He's not even 20. This isn't the time for kids. Winston considered that and then said, maybe I should help him find a suitable girl. After a beat, he asked, what's Miss Perkins been doing lately? Karen hesitated. Sir, I don't think Miss Perkins is suitable. She cares too much about money, and Mrs. Devenhill has strong opinions. If Mrs. Devinehill knew Perkins's background, she'd make trouble. Winston raised an eyebrow. What background? She seems connected to Viggo Tarasov, Karen said. Some time ago, when she was desperate, she took on several tasks without the hotel's approval. Her targets were all Viggo's opponents. Winston snorted. What an idiot. She has a powerful patron and doesn't embrace him. Relying on someone like Viggo, she'll be implicated sooner or later. He looked in the direction William had gone and added quietly, William doesn't need Viggo now, but when Viggo starts thinking he can do whatever he wants, William will toss him aside like a pebble. Karen nodded. There are no permanent allies, only permanent interests. The thought left Winston silent for a long time. I can feel William keeping his guard up around me, he said at last. He hides it well, but I've seen all sorts in my decades. My intuition tells me my nephew is more ruthless than I ever imagined. Perhaps I'm just another piece on his board. How could that be, sir? Karen sounded alarmed. You were going to hand the Continental Hotel to Mr. Divinehill. You've already given him the most important thing. What more could he want? Winston didn't answer directly. He had a suspicion he wouldn't voice even to Karen. Maybe William's sights were higher, on the Continental Council, or, in a wilder thought, on the high table itself. The Continental Hotel had a history stretching back centuries. It had survived many near-extinction events. The assassin world couldn't be wiped out. Winston couldn't imagine William replacing such an institution. Even if the idea frightened him, Winston pushed it aside. For now, he would take things one step at a time. William left the Continental through a secret passage and waited a few minutes on the street. The Four Seasons car service Sunday had arrived on time. A silver Rolls-Royce pulled up beside him. Before the driver could open the door, William opened it himself and got in. Good evening, Mr. Divinehill. It's an honor to serve you again, the driver said from behind the wheel. Good evening, Adam. Take me to the Victoria's Secret headquarters. Yes, sir. Half an hour later, William sat in the car, watching Alessandra Ambrosio stride out of the Victoria's Secret building. When she saw him through the open window, her face broke into a smile. She hurried to the car, opened the door, and, the moment she climbed in, hugged him so tightly he barely had room to breathe. She twisted his waist playfully, gritted her teeth, and muttered, You bastard! It's been over a month. Finally remembered to come find me. I'm sorry, my dear. I've been tied up in Oxford with some business, William said softly, rubbing her shoulders. I booked us a table at Restaurant 11 on Madison Avenue. After dinner, we'll catch a movie and then go home for a workout. How about some shopping on Fifth Avenue tomorrow? Not nearly enough, Ambrosio pouted, feigning distress. My friends are practically dying laughing at me. What kind of boyfriend disappears for almost 2 months and hardly calls? Can't you make time to come see me? William bristled inwardly. Of course I had time. You could have come to England. What if I rented a big yacht tomorrow and invited your colleagues for dinner and a cruise? He suggested with a smile. Ambrosio sat up out of his embrace and fixed him with a glare. Don't you even think about it. William, you're a scoundrel. Don't act like I don't know what you're doing. If you show up with those girls, who knows who'll be flirting with who? They'll tear you apart. Before long, some of them will be spreading rumors in the papers and trying to pick a fight with me to steal you away. She lowered her voice, cupped his face in both hands, and stared into his eyes. If you want to cheat, go cheat on someone from another industry. I will never let you show up in front of those Victoria's Secret bitches. How am I cheating? William protested, freeing himself from her hands and kissing her instead. I promise I haven't cheated. I came to find you as soon as I got back to New York. Ambrosio pursed her lips, clearly skeptical, but she didn't press it. She kissed him back, linked her arm through his, and said with a smile, Okay, I believe you. After over a month of closed training for the show, I'm basically a rabbit, all low-salt, oil-free, sugar-free vegetarian meals. Tonight, I'm breaking my diet, I want a little piece of steak. Just a small piece, William laughed. Fine, eat the whole steak, but after dinner, I'll make you burn it off with a killer workout. Besides working out, what else can you do? She teased, rolling her eyes. Unwilling to be outdone, William took out his phone and tapped his assistant. Sunday, find yachts available for immediate booking and send photos to my phone. Ask the head chef from Restaurant 11 to come to the yacht. I want to have dinner on board. Money is no object. Then he pressed the intercom. Adam, we're heading to the yacht club. We're on our way, sir, Adam replied, starting the car. A moment later, Sunday's voice chimed through his phone. Sir, I've sent photos. I recommend the Riva 50T. I'm contacting the head chef now and will update you shortly. William scrolled through the images and nodded. That'll do. Ambrosio blinked. Butler? When did you hire a butler? He's not a butler in the usual sense. William smiled at nothing. Sunday is the product of the last month or two's work. Sunday, this is my girlfriend, Alessandra. Hello, Miss Ambrosio. I am Sunday, an artificial intelligence butler system created by Mr. Devonshire. Pleasure to meet you. Artificial intelligence. Ambrosio clutched his arm. So that's why you've been missing? Building an AI? Not entirely the only reason, William admitted. In the past month or two, besides developing Sunday, I also set up a horse farm at Oxford Castle and bought hundreds of Akaltech horses. I made some money on the side, he grinned. Enough money, perhaps, to buy your Victoria's Secret. No, maybe 10 Victoria's Secrets. 10? Ambrosio swore and then, half laughing, wrapped her arms around his neck. Is this real, or is it April Fool's? How much did you make exactly? She demanded, leaning in. William shrugged. I haven't tallied it all precisely. Sunday can tell you. Ambrosio addressed the phone. Sunday, how much does William actually have? There was a beat of silence. William raised an eyebrow. Sunday's voice finally came through, deliberately low so Adam, who was driving, wouldn't overhear. Miss Ambrosio, counting only stocks, Mr. Devonshire holds approximately 11.6 billion US dollars. In bank deposits, he holds about 45.2 billion US dollars, and he physically keeps another 6.3 billion in cash, bringing liquid funds to roughly 51.5 billion US dollars. About 300 to 400 million of that will be subject to tax. The exact figure depends on refunds and deductions. If you include gold, jewelry, and antiques, his total net worth exceeds 20 billion US dollars. Sunday paused, then added, Sir, you are one of the fastest, most aggressive earners in the world. At the current rate, you are likely to rank in the top 10, or even top 5, on next year's Forbes Global Billionaires list. Ambrosio screamed, a delighted, high-pitched sound that startled William. He clamped a hand over her mouth reflexively, but before he could scold her, she sank her teeth into his finger, eyes half-lidded and unfocused. William thought, utterly undone, God, how much longer until the yacht club? We will arrive at the yacht club in 3 minutes, sir, Sunday reported. I detected your heart rate just increased by 27 beats per minute. Would you like me to arrange a doctor? No, I'm fine, William said, smiling into Ambrosio's hazy eyes. I've never been better. All right, it seems I need to add a human emotion database to my program. May I autonomously search for data in that area, sir? William knew Sunday was teasing and sighed. Fine. A few minutes later, they arrived at the yacht club. William carried Ambrosio, who was practically clinging to him, up to the Riva 50T. After exchanging pleasantries with the yacht club manager and confirming 3 times that William could operate the yacht himself, the manager, with a wary look, discreetly tugged the Riva sales representative aside. Only after handing the keys to William did he say, Mr. Devonshire, this Riva 50T is a display model, just out of the shipyard. You and Miss Ambrosio are its first guests. I hope you enjoy it. As the manager steered the sales rep away for a final word, Ambrosio watched them go with a chuckle. Darling, they think we're both important and naive, she teased. They even tried to sell us a boat that hasn't officially been released. Out of William's sight, the sales rep was being thoroughly scolded by the yacht club manager. William frowned. This Riva shouldn't have been here yet. Sunday, what's this boat doing here? He asked. Sir, the yacht left the Italian La Spezia shipyard 7 days ago, Sunday replied. It completed 3 months of sea trials beforehand. I checked the navigation logs. No safety incidents. zero accident record. It was scheduled to attend the New York Yacht Show in 3 days. The reason they're eager to sell is financial. This boat was a private concept project initiated by La Spezia before their acquisition of Riva in May. It was meant to demonstrate their commitment and creativity to Riva's employees, built using the best materials and technology, funded by loans. After the stock market crash this year, La Spezia is facing pressure after the acquisition, so they're trying to offload this new concept yacht. Given the market, few buyers can afford a yacht priced above $18 million. Understanding the situation eased William's concerns. He smiled and led Ambrosio on a tour of the yacht, a model that, in his previous life, wouldn't have appeared for another decade. The Riva 50T was 49 meters long, 9 meters wide, with 4 decks, 1 master suite, 5 guest cabins, and room for 12 guests. Ambrosio wanted to inspect every corner. After a brisk walkthrough, William pulled her into the master cabin and asked with a smile, "Do you like it?" Ambrosio blinked. "What?" "The boat," he said, laughing. "If you like it, I'll buy it. You can use it whenever you want." "Use?" She tapped her lip with a finger, then giggled. "So I can just use it, darling?" "Of course." William put on a mock serious face. "Even if I gave it to you, could you afford the upkeep on your salary?" "You're so stingy," Ambrosio complained, hugging his arm. "Can't you give me the yacht and pay for all the expenses? I'm your girlfriend." William pressed a hand to her forehead. "No fever. Are you overexcited?" She slapped his hand away. "Just tell me, can I spend your money?" "Yes," William said easily. "I can give you an allowance." He paused. "But didn't you refuse my money before? Why the sudden change?" Ambrosio rolled her eyes. "Before was before. If I don't take it now, some other bitch will." "I want to buy with your money," she declared. "I need those women who eye you to know I'm the real girlfriend, the one who spends your money freely." William stared at her blinking eyes. It seemed the attention Ambrosio had gotten since joining Victoria's Secret had riled her up. He squeezed her hand. "How about $500,000 a month for spending money?" "500,000?" Ambrosio bumped her forehead against his chin. "You still a billionaire, darling. Ordinary billionaires pay their angels over $1 million a month. You're stingy." William smirked. "They get paid and say goodbye in a month. This is for years, maybe a lifetime if we get along. $500,000 a month is $6 million a year. That's more than enough for daily expenses." Ambrosio hugged him tightly and murmured, "You scoundrel, if we get along, it's for a lifetime." She looked up at him and blinked. "Darling, I want to work out." William laughed. "That's easy." An hour later, he emerged from the master cabin in a swimsuit and a long robe and stepped out onto the foredeck on the yacht's second level. "Sir, the head chef and assistant from Restaurant 11 are already waiting in the yacht club's reception. Shall I invite them over?" "Yes, and call the yacht club manager and the Riva sales representative as well." "Understood, sir." Within minutes, a small truck and a golf cart pulled up. The yacht club manager hurried onto the yacht and bowed. "Good evening, Mr. Devonshire. I'm Martin Donner, the yacht club manager." William stood and shook his hand. "Good evening, Mr. Donner. I like this club. Would you mind managing a few things for me tonight?" "Not at all," Martin said, bright and earnest. "It's an honor. We'll do whatever you need. Rest assured, Mr. Devonshire, we'll handle everything." "Very good. Any expenses tonight are on me." "Understood, Mr. Devonshire." Martin then coordinated the staff. Chefs and servers carried dinnerware and ingredients on board while others set up for a meal. Once everything was in place, William climbed to the upper cockpit and, with Sunday's guidance, walked through the main operating steps. After a few practice runs, he started the engines, carefully eased the yacht out of its berth, and steered into the open sea under the cover of night. They motored for half an hour before dropping anchor in shallow water. Back in the master suite, William woke Ambrosio, who had fallen into a deep, exhausted sleep. She pretended to be annoyed as she begged to be carried to wash up. William obliged, without hesitation. They lingered over the private intimacy of the cabin before finally stepping out onto the top deck. Under the night sky, with the soft swell of the ocean and the sleek lines of the yacht all around them, Ambrosio glowed with excitement and a quiet pride in being bold enough to seize the moment. She wrapped her arms around William and leaned into the night, already imagining all the ways the yacht and her newfound allowance would change their lives. Chapter 305, No Marriage is Fine. She was glad she had held on to her last line of defense, unlike so many young women who had given themselves away too soon. After confirming William's feelings, she had offered him the most precious thing she had, and it seemed the gamble had paid off. She could feel him slowly accepting her. As for his philandering, Ambrosio knew she couldn't change him. It would be odd if he never cheated. After all, a young, super-rich man like William attracted attention everywhere he went. Victoria's Secret models asking about his whereabouts was only one sign of how popular he was. What really worried Ambrosio was whether William would ever marry her, and strangely, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted him to. Her years in the modeling world had taught her that marriage was not always a happy ending. It could be the start of a disaster. The routine of a married life might smother William's passion. Given his restless nature, staying together long-term could mean he'd tire of her quickly. And Ambrosio was not willing to give up her career just as it was reaching its peak. Besides her fame, she had very little that could permanently bind William. Still, it would be a lie to say she'd never fantasized about becoming Lady Devonshire, the future Countess of Oxford. Holding William's arm, she tested the waters. "Darling, do you think I should go to Oxford to visit your mother?" William, who had been gazing out at the night ocean, turned to her, smiled, and kissed her forehead. "Darling, we've been together over 6 months. You know my situation. You're smart. Meeting my mother now wouldn't do you any favors. I promise you'd only be disappointed." "All right." Ambrosio rolled her eyes. "I knew it. Someone like me could never become a countess. To you aristocrats and the super-rich, celebrities are only worth being polite about, and at worst, we're playthings." She sank into his arms and sighed. "But if I hadn't become a model, I'd still be in Brazil. I wouldn't have met you." She lifted her face and, voice soft and pleading, asked, "Promise you won't abandon me, okay?" For a moment, silence fell, heavy and terrifying. Then William said quietly, He didn't have to think long. He liked Ambrosio, clever, undemanding, and not the kind to nag. His hesitation had more to do with his own possessiveness and fear of being tied down by marriage. Who wouldn't want a beautiful, compliant partner? He softened and said, "I don't think I'll ever get married, but we can make a pact." "What?" Hearing "never get married" didn't disappoint Ambrosio at all. It brightened her mood. She'd had little hope of marriage, so as long as no other woman benefited from William's life, it would be a blessing. If he never married, she might still be his official girlfriend in all but name. In many places she knew, Brazil, America, couples stayed together forever as boyfriend and girlfriend. Maybe, in time, his sympathies would fall on her. Maybe after 10 or 20 years, when William tired of his playboy life, he'd marry the woman who had always been by his side. Seeing the joy on her face, William shook his head, smiling. "You still want to hear about the pact I mentioned?" "It doesn't matter, darling. All I want is to be with you. You take care of the rest." Ambrosio kissed him. "Teach me how to drive the boat." William laughed, took her hand, and helped her into the driver's seat. "You really don't want to hear the pact?" he teased. "Nope," she said without hesitation. "Just teach me." He grinned as he settled beside her. "Fair enough, but full disclosure, I've never driven a boat either. We'll figure it out together." Ambrosio studied the small retro steering wheel and the rows of buttons with bright curiosity. "Your pacts are just promises and guarantees," she said, half teasing. "So long as I don't betray you, right, darling?" William paused, impressed. Her answer was astute, close enough. "But what use is a promise if I don't get to be with you forever? As long as you still love me, I'll have what I deserve." Saying it out loud would only make our relationship look like it's about ownership. If I weren't trying to stake a claim, I wouldn't even ask for pocket money. "All right, now I know you've got big plans for me, and you couldn't care less about a little cash." Ambrosio laughed and kissed him. William tickled her playfully. In his head, he agreed. Ambrosio's approach was smart. With someone as cautious and suspicious as him, clarity mattered. And sometimes, not fighting was the real victory. What was a little pocket money compared to keeping William happy? $500,000 a month was only $6 million a year, less than the cost of a fine piece of jewelry to him. Their bickering dissolved into laughter and touches, and soon sparks were flying between them in the cockpit. They were about to take things further when William's phone buzzed and Sunday's familiar voice chimed through, polite and efficient. "Mr. Devonshire, Miss Ambrosio, dinner is ready. Mr. Martin will be on the top deck to see you in about 15 seconds. Ambrosio laughed at William's exasperated expression. Annoyed, he reached over and gave her a playful smack on the backside. "Ah!" Ambrosio yelped, then swung around and punched him in mock anger. "You jerk!" "Heh!" William said, enjoying the exchange. "There's plenty more jerky stuff to come. For your fashion show, your boyfriend has a duty to whip you into shape. After we drop everyone off at the yacht club and head back out to sea, I'll work you until you're exhausted. We'll see who collapses first." Ambrosio shot back defiantly. "I've been training intensely for 43 days. My stamina's great. Just wait. You'll be begging for mercy." William felt Martin's approach on the deck and led Ambrosio downstairs. They met Martin on the second deck. William instructed him to find Riva's sales manager to handle the return trip. On the first deck, the servers from Restaurant 11 bowed and escorted them to the dining area. Having already indulged earlier, both of them had healthy appetites. William, the perpetual eater, polished off 3 main courses and reached about 70% full, much to the waitstaff's surprise. Ambrosio finished her specially prepared low-calorie meal with equal relish. When they rose from the table, the head chef of Restaurant 11 appeared at the dining area with a broad, pleased smile and asked William for his opinion on the day's dishes. William and Ambrose showered praise on the chef who had kept Restaurant 11 at 3 Michelin stars for over a decade. William shook Chef Hunter's hand and laughed. "If I didn't know it would be impossible to persuade you, I'd seriously try to bring you to Oxford as my private chef." Before Hunter could answer, Ambrose tugged William's sleeve. "Oh no, darling. If Chef Hunter moves to Oxford, what will I do in New York? I was planning to come to Restaurant 11 every week to taste Mr. Hunter's cooking." Thank you, Hunter said, smiling broadly. "I'm honored that Mr. Devonshire enjoys my food, but Restaurant 11 is my life's work. I can't leave." He turned to a subordinate and took a card. "This is our Supreme Gold card. It's made of 18K rose gold. With it, you and Miss Ambrose can dine any time without waiting, and I will personally see to cardholder's service." Ambrose accepted the card with delight, thanked him, and then brightened with another request. "Mr. Hunter, can I book the entire restaurant for an evening?" Hunter hesitated. "Well, booking the whole restaurant is difficult. Our reservations are full until next November, but we can reserve a private VIP room. How many guests are you expecting?" 20 to 50, maybe, Ambrose said uncertainly. "I want to treat my colleagues from Victoria's Secret, but I don't know the exact head count yet." Hearing dozens, Hunter's face showed he was worried. William cut in smoothly. "Just reserve the largest VIP room, darling. It's unlikely all the angels will come. You'll be lucky to get 10. The people around them, accustomed to the delicate social sparring of the wealthy, smiled. Ambrose, not yet famous enough to command attendance from big-name angels, huffed dismissively. "If I invite them in your name, they'll come," she said. William's eyes lit up. "Humph, you're so busy. I don't want to disturb your work." He already knew it wouldn't be that easy, but he reached for a pen, wrote a check for $1 million, and handed it to Hunter. Hunter took it, surprised. "Mr. Devonshire?" he said, glancing at the sum. He wasn't foolish enough to think it was a tip, William smiled. "Besides paying for tonight's bill, deposit the rest onto Miss Ambrose's gold card. You offer pre-deposited meal accounts, don't you?" Hunter grinned and waved the check. "We didn't have that service before, but given this check, I don't see any reason not to add it." He bowed slightly. "You will be our restaurant's first diamond-level patrons. As a token of our gratitude, tonight's meal is on the house, and from now on, you and Miss Ambrose will receive a 15% discount whenever you dine here." Martin, standing nearby, emitted a small gasp and quickly apologized. The others reassured him it was fine. Martin leaned closer and said, "Mr. Devonshire, to my knowledge, Restaurant 11 never offers discounts." "Forget discounts. People paying through the nose for birthday bookings still can't get a table." William laughed lightly. Inside, he wasn't surprised. Michelin-starred restaurants don't live by their stars alone. Publicity, buzz, and the occasional gimmick help keep them in the spotlight. A prepaid $1 million account was an excellent bit of theater. A prestige kitchen could turn it into long-term benefit. Hunter had done the right thing on principle. At the same time, the amount reminded William of his mother's birthday. Lena's was the 23rd of next month, and he had done nothing to prepare. He smiled at Hunter. "Thank you. That $1 million might be used for a banquet." Hunter's brow creased. $1 million? Our average, even with wine, is about $500 per person. That would be enough for 1,000 meals. William glanced at Ambrose, who looked amused and vaguely flustered, and explained, "Men make money so their women can spend it. The dishes themselves aren't the point. This is Miss Ambrose's first proper social invitation. I want everything to be the best. I don't know much about ingredients, but do you apply the 15% discount to wines that cost tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a bottle?" Hunter's pride in accommodating elite patrons turned to unease. "That's a serious issue. We've always emphasized food first, and our wine prices are quite transparent. We buy from wineries and mark up about 12%, which is actually 1 to 3% lower than first-tier distributors. But vintage wines at tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars? We can source many rare bottles, and I'm proud of those connections, but we can't afford to sell them at an 85% price. If we sold such wines that cheaply, the merchants who supplied them would be furious." He said it bluntly. Vintage wines are scarce, and dealers sell on trust and margins. Undercutting them would not only upset suppliers, but could ruin future access. No merchant would keep selling to a buyer who destroyed their market. Hunter's pride remained. He could get the wines, but he couldn't, in good conscience, or, for the restaurant's future, promise massive discounts on ultra-rare bottles. Cutting off someone's source of income is like killing their parents. Thinking that, William smiled as he waited for Hunter to speak. After a beat, "I'm sorry, Mr. Devonshire. That was my oversight. As compensation, how about—" "Wait," William interrupted. He had been expecting Hunter to offer compensation, but he preferred to propose the terms himself. Money mattered to William, but for his mother, he could be generous to the point of extravagance. After wasting time to maneuver the famous chef into a corner, he was ready to close the deal. "I don't care about that money," William said. "If you want to make it up to me, come to England on the 23rd of next month and be the head chef for my mother's birthday. I can cancel your restaurant's discount privileges," he continued, "as long as I retain the right to dine whenever I like. As for you and your team's pay—" He paused, then named a figure that made everyone around him suck in air. $1.5 million for 3 days. Hiss! Except for Hunter, everyone else reacted with audible shock. It was likely the highest fee anyone in the culinary world had heard. Hunter himself was surprised rather than pleased. After a moment, and under the astonished gazes of those nearby, he sighed softly. "Mr. Devonshire, I suppose this was your plan all along." William was slightly taken aback by how composed Hunter remained, but he pressed on, switching to the family appeal with practiced warmth. "I know you're busy, Mr. Hunter, but this will be the first time I celebrate my mother's birthday since I made my fortune," he said. "My mother sacrificed too much for me. I want to give her the very best banquet. In the culinary world, there's no chef with a greater reputation, more experience, or who has held 3 Michelin stars longer than you. I believe your cuisine is the only choice for head chef." Coming from a billionaire, the compliment landed. Hunter felt flattered, though he was rightly busy, and still stung by William's maneuvering. But William doesn't stop until he gets what he wants. He followed up quickly. "Perhaps I can invite Chef Gordon Ramsay from his restaurant in Chelsea to act as your sous chef. It'll lighten your workload and be a chance for culinary exchange." "I know Gordon Ramsay. His restaurant just earned a 3rd Michelin star," Hunter said, now intrigued. "Exchanges between 3-star chefs are rare. Meeting a newly promoted 3-star chef was an opportunity to learn contemporary tastes. And the pay, $1.5 million for 3 days, was staggering even for someone of Hunter's stature. Still, running a banquet is more than showing up for 3 days. It requires immediate preparation. Do we need to provide all the ingredients, banquet tableware, kitchen utensils, waitstaff? Hunter asked. Everything related to the banquet. Do you expect our restaurant to handle it? Of course, William replied without hesitation. That $1.5 million is your team's fee. All other costs are on me. But I want your restaurant to take full charge of the banquet. I will simply pay. Hunter felt both relieved and irked by William's stance. He was glad payment would be prompt if things went well, but that also meant even more responsibility. Once he accepted the head chef role, it wouldn't be a mere 3-day job. Preparations had to start now. In effect, $1.5 million would buy him well over a month of his time. Can you tell me how many guests you expect? Hunter asked. What's the banquet budget? Will everything truly be entrusted to our restaurant? And stop, William cut in. I don't know how many guests there will be, but the initial budget is $5 million. If that's not enough, and the expenses are reasonable, I'll increase it. Let me be clear, I will only pay and have someone audit the accounts. You handle everything else. How much the restaurant ultimately earns depends on your ability. If the costs are justified and stand up to audit, even if it comes to $10 million, I don't care. A $5 to $10 million banquet, Hunter murmured, head bowed in thought. With that scale of an order, the restaurant's shareholders would be hard-pressed to refuse. He called them, as expected. The proposal met no resistance once the sums were known. A few minutes later, he returned with a smile. Then happy cooperation, Mr. Devonshire, Hunter said. William laughed, pleased. Money could buy almost any Michelin chef. If not, it only meant the offer wasn't large enough. Happy cooperation, Hunter. My private lawyer will handle the next steps. Contact him for anything you need. Understood, Mr. Devonshire, Hunter replied. He paused. I don't have much time. If possible, I'd like to speak to your lawyer now to discuss details. That's good professionalism, William said. With outsiders present, he didn't want to seem too showy, so he pretended to take out his phone and said a name. To those around him, except Ambrosio, it was astonishing when the phone immediately dialed. They were surprised by the effortless command and by the device itself, a large, buttonless, full-screen phone he would never hand to an outsider. The gadgets he had once issued to operatives like Bond and the Expendables self-destructed after missions. He wouldn't be lending this to anyone. The call woke Anthony, sleeping in London, who answered with his usual deference. Good evening, Mr. Devonshire. What are your instructions? William explained the birthday banquet. Anthony groaned inwardly at the scope of the task. Sir, I'm already overwhelmed. I'm your private lawyer, not a housekeeper. William chuckled. What's your annual salary? £1 million, Anthony replied guiltily, assuming William was reminding him of his value. Then I'll double it, William said. You're authorized an extra £1 million a year to hire more staff. Any more questions? No, Mr. Devonshire. No more questions, Anthony said, almost elated. In just over half a year, his salary had jumped from £300,000 to £2 million, and he could now spend £1 million building a team. That budget would let him assemble a private staff of 8 top young professionals. And with the 4 subordinates assigned to him by the Mensa law firm, he'd soon run the largest junior team in the firm. The money had Anthony quickly coordinating with Hunter, who had taken William's phone. When William finished the call, Ambrosio, who had been standing beside him, put an arm around him and protested with mock indignation. Darling, Hunter's preparing your mother's birthday. What about my banquet? Of course he wouldn't say a girlfriend mattered more than a mother. William smiled. He's not leaving for England right away. Most of the preparation will be done here in New York. Your dinner will be at Restaurant 11, he added. Chef Hunter still has a day to get things ready. They all laughed, and the deal was set. Chapter 307, Throwing Money.